Gap here or? Oh. Your kids. I want Nancy. You know? Okay, good morning, everyone. I will call this session of Board of Commissioners goal setting meeting to order. And first order of business is introductions. I'm Zana Ojuro. And actually, before I go any further, I want to state for the sheriff and anyone else that may be online that we can't see you this morning, but we will be able to hear you.
And they can't see us.
You can't see us.
And we can see you if you
We
turn on
can
your
see
camera.
you. Hi, you can't see us. Sorry. And I'll pass it to you.
Nancy Wise, Commissioner and Vice Chair.
Pat Malone, Commissioner.
Vance Barney, County Council.
Rachel McEnany, County Administrator.
Rick Prager, Assistant County Administrator.
Lacey Molell, Interim Executive Director of the Community Health Centers and the Health Services Department.
Christine Mosbaugh, Strategy and Engagement Manager for the Community Health Centers.
Fort Greene County Public Information, Sean McGuire, POC.
Eric Mundell, Board Reporter. Mark Michalski, Board Staff.
And Sheriff.
Jeff Van Arsdale, I'm the Benton County Sheriff.
And is there anyone else online who'd like to introduce themselves? Okay, we will then move on to review and approve the agenda. I am not aware of any changes. Okay, then I will consider the agenda approved. Next step is to review and approve goal setting minutes from December 12th, 2023. Any changes, additions? Motion?
Move to approve December 12th, 2023 goal setting minutes.
Second.
All in favor, please signify with an eye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, next up is new business. And the first item is 4.1, notice of intent to apply for behavioral health services expansion grant. Lacey, take it away.
Yes, do we have, oh, is that the right?
Oh,
Is that the right
that
one?
isn't the right one. Can you log yourself?
I don't know. Can I send you a different one, just an updated one that we sent this morning
I sent it last night.
or last night?
I guess, Chair, okay with that?
Sure. Oh, is that, okay, it's just a PowerPoint.
Would it be, did you email it to me or?
Amanda. We can send it to you, though.
Sure, so we'll just need a minute or two to.
We, we are good at talking, so we can start as soon as I send this email anyways, because I can't send an email and talk at the same time.
So I'm assuming that you're going to be covering items 4.1 and 4.2.
Yes,
Time.
yes. And actually, we're starting with 4.2 in our PowerPoint, so
Okay.
isn't that just great? But I realize now I might need to change my settings. Add Erica here. Where do you go here to share it?
Usually right there. Do we want to do like a 10-minute one in the meantime? Or?
Yeah, so, okay, we can start, because we can see our slides here. So essentially what we're gonna go over today is we have two grant opportunities that HRSA has provided for community health centers. We're gonna go over the background of why they have chosen these to fund, the funding opportunities, how they align with the community health center services, what it looks like in our local context, and then what the application process is, which is going to be really brief. And who is eligible to apply. So as we've been talking to you guys for some time, the HRSA was waiting for the federal budget to be approved. It was finally approved there at the end of March. And now they're really just trying to decide how they're going to be spending their budget. We still don't know about new access points, but these are two opportunities that they have posted so far. So you have to have an active 330 grant, which means that you're a recognized health center, and then you have to have H80, an active H80 grant, which is the money that you are a funded health center. So the first one that we're going to cover is the Justice. It is called the FY25 Quality Improvement Fund Transitions in Care for Justice Involved Populations, which they have a really nice shortened QIF-TJI, if you want to think about it that way. But this was released on April the 10th, and the final application is due on July the 2nd, with the initial application started by June this 10th, which is why we are coming to you now. Yeah.
And because all of these initiatives and opportunities really come from our federal partners, we're going to share a little bit about the federal rationale and then why health centers have been chosen, and then talk to you just a little bit about the context. So this justice involved space has a focus on expanding access to healthcare to support people who are released from incarceration and looking at reentry, and also has a White House connection to public safety. So those are the two spaces that they're really focusing on. And in the PowerPoint, and if you are interested, there are a handful of other documents that sort of align to the president's White House budget. So that's there. It also connects to an executive order that looks at racial equity and experiences in communities for people, acknowledging burdens that are not shared equally among Black, Latino, American Indian, Alaskan Native individuals who are incarcerated at 3 to 5 times the rate of their white counterparts. So thinking about what community health centers can do to help reduce those existing situations and not compound them once people are released. The 1115 process, which we have a state space to talk about, it also has a landing point at the CMS level for improving healthcare access in creative ways. And so some states have applied to actually have this be part of their ongoing 1115 waiver. Oregon isn't one of them, but certainly we will learn from California, Montana, and Washington as they go through that.
And they're using some of those funds to pay for pre-release healthcare services.
It's basically like the 30
90 days.
90 to reach in.
Yeah.
And for Medicaid, we did apply for that in our Medicaid waiver, but it is not active yet because CMS hasn't approved it yet.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
So California, Montana, and Washington are part of the QI group, I think, that initially, so I think that they're the pilot, yeah.
So there's potential for this to land in like the Medicaid 1115 space in the future, but right now it's with a handful of states. And Oregon's entry into the 1115 space is that we do have access for health-related social needs for some priority and specific populations. And among that is those who are released from incarceration in the last 12 months and those who are at risk of being homeless or who are homeless. And so that's where we can start to connect some dots with the health-related social needs. So that's food, housing, climate, and outreach support. And so we will be able to use Oregon's 1115 waiver to braid some things together to help support this population.
So the justice involved re-entry, which is, we're going to fast forward here through, does this work? I just hit the next button. Oh, sorry, I forgot there's animation on the first slide. My bad. Love animation on PowerPoints, right? Okay, here we go. For this particular grant opportunity, it's for people who are 18 or over. So we wouldn't be able to use this in some of the juvenile institutions that we have here in Benton, or that serves Benton and Lynn counties. They do not include a pretrial detention, and it also doesn't cover anybody that's in federal incarceration. So it is for people who are within 90 days of their scheduled release or expected release, and they have to be in a carceral setting that is in a health center service area. So for us, our service area is Benton and Lynn counties. And we'll kind of talk about why this is a little bit complicated for us, which you guys are already aware, I'm sure. HRSA's rationale, right, is that 1.8 million adults are incarcerated, and most of them are in state and local jails. Talking specifically around HRSA, is involvement. Most 80% have chronic medical, psychiatric, or substance use conditions, and these infectious diseases as well that are just going unaddressed a lot of times after discharge or reentry. And that, you know, most people leave in carceral settings and make meaningful contributions to their communities. And then, of course, that there's just health-related challenges, which we are all greatly aware of. And the those populations that we talked about as being minority populations already face the consequences of inadequate care and availability in their communities. So the known barriers to care after release are, you know, the lack of health coverage, either getting people reinstated for VA benefits or Medicaid, that there isn't necessarily the expanded Medicaid in all states. So HRSA is saying this is a way that we can help in these states that don't have Medicaid expansion. Documentation, you know, is a big issue for people post reentry. So getting those IDs and other things to be able to apply for benefits, transportation, and then affordability of medications. So especially those who are on MOUD services for opioid use are just really expensive if you don't have health insurance to cover those as well. So this is a quality improvement award, and we'll kind of touch on that a little bit more, but there's 51 awards that are going out for $1 million each. It's one-time funding, and the time frame is listed on there. So December, so kind of the beginning of January 2025 through December 2026. And so the objectives here, of course, are to facilitate successful transitions into care, to demonstrate improved health outcomes, to demonstrate that we're providing culturally affirming comprehensive primary care services, and then to engage with community partners, people who are already helping address some of these gaps. And then the other key focus is just the multi-generational, so addressing families, children's partners, everybody that's affected by reentry for its population.
And so to that end, and because this is a quality improvement and really kind of an innovation space to pilot and learn some things, they are asking that we gather information from patients and communities. So listed up there are our health center patients, our health center staff, community partners, so all these people who we know are involved, but additionally people who have experience, who were incarcerated, or whose family members and loved ones might have had that experience, so that we are designing reentry programs that are meaningful for people. The other piece that really cements this as a quality improvement space is that HRSA will be adding on. It's not part of the award. We don't have to budget or plan for it, but it will be a requirement that we participate if we apply and are awarded these funds, that they have a really stringent evaluation process that they're going to run, and that we work in a learning collaborative with other folks who have these grant dollars to really figure out what it can look like for health centers to be active and meaningful players in this space. So we would expect to be part of those processes. And they are very clear that they're asking us to see what our role could be, but this does not release the state and local carceral authorities from what they are required to do. So we don't go in and provide care or services in lieu of, on top of, instead of. We are really just trying to make that bridge from the jail setting and carceral setting to the community, and that those obligations stay in place. So the partnership there becomes very important, because you have to know what each person is responsible for and try and maximize the efficiency and effectiveness there. And so in doing this, you all are probably also aware that one of the opportunities and sometimes challenges that we have is that we're doing our work across 2 counties, so Benton and Lynn counties, meaning we are thinking about different contexts all the time, along with different locations. And so there's a little bit of information up here about both Benton County and Lynn County. And when we have talked with our partners in Benton County, it's a little bit less clear what those 90-day timeframes might be, because because of spaces borrowed in other counties and Norcor. And so we have thought about what that would look like, as well as the fact that Lynn County is a pretty sizable space. They have 230 beds processing a large number of people. Anything else you want to say about that?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, so we just, it says unique context, maybe challenges. Yeah, so there's lots of opportunity for us to innovate and improve, I think, for our community here in Benton County in the discharge process. So CHCs.
You have a question?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so if this grant is awarded, would we be using grant dollars in both Benton County and Lynn County?
So we would, yes, because that's our service area is Benton and Lynn County. And from our conversations with the sheriff's department, we understand that we house quite a few of our Benton County inmates in the Lynn County Jail also, so.
Well, that's a smaller number. Yeah, I think it's
Right,
mostly Polk
right.
County and Northmore, but, okay, I am interested in the, if Benton County is, how much work and effort is Benton County putting in? And I just want to make sure or know if Lynn County is going to be more, if they're going to get more benefits than Benton County. Or if it's going to be equal or less, or just.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the realities that our staff are working already through the arrangements that are in place for us to provide primary care. And you see up there that the ideas we have right now are about health navigation and harm reduction. So we have those internally to Benton County, serving Benton County clinics, and we have those in partnership with Lynn County, serving Lynn County. So our hope and you'll see on one of these next slides, we've met with Lynn County, and they would be happy to partner in the way that we already naturally and sort of by arrangement do partner with them to continue to provide some of the people power. But our primary care is in Lynn County. So we provide primary care in Lynn County, and we would expect to do some of that continuation or transportation through channels that already exist.
Okay, but we wouldn't be taking on any of the responsibility that lies.
No, with
County.
Lynn County government, no.
So I think, just for clarity's sake,
Thank you.
for the record, that this is similar to what we do for others. There's a clear delineation between the Lynn and the Benton side of things. There's not this potential to where Benton County employees may be working on Lynn County type services. And I think that's
Right.
true in all of your services.
Yeah,
correct?
yes, yeah. So that's the existing model that we've maintained. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for asking.
It's a geographical location, not a government entity when we say that, so, yeah. So what we already provide, and as community health centers, is coordinated, high-quality primary care, of course, affordability and accessibility, and that we don't decline services to anybody based off their ability to pay. And we offer all of these enabling services, which is just that wraparound whole person care that CHCs provide. And so this is a list of suggested or possible opportunities from the HRSA to be able to help and assist with justice-involved populations in reentry, including, acute and chronic disease management, getting immunizations, obstetrics, which we don't provide, and we don't intend on doing that. So just want to put that out there. Family planning services, lots of things, including PrEP, which HIV and AIDS treatment, preventative dental, and then, of course, we've substance use disorder and MOUD services in the incarceral setting or that discharge. And telehealth is allowed. They put that in there as a little caveat, but they really are looking for in-person services. So this is also when we think about like Norcor and how we do that, that these are all things that we're kind of keeping in mind as potential challenges. So really the ideas and things as we've had our initial meetings really came up around case management and community connections. So the idea of having kind of a third party, not necessarily jail or sheriff's department staff who are doing some of this case management and reentry, that perhaps this will help staff or inmates or family members feel more inclined to utilize services in that way. And then addressing, of course, these health-related social needs, which include all of these things listed on the slide there. So these are the meetings that we've had so far. We met with quite a few Benton County stakeholders together collectively. And back in April, and we have, of course, been participating in the HRSA related trainings and assistance. We've met with the Lynn County Public Health partners to talk about what shared resources we have and how we can complement and enhance. Upcoming conversations, we're going to be meeting with the Lynn County jail captains, which Captain Devaney provided us with a great introduction to. And then Captain Devaney also has introduced us to the Western Restorative and Criminal Justice Research Center, who's been working with Benton County. And so we're hoping to have some conversations with them before our first application is due, so we can really talk about what are the long-term opportunities for looking at improving reentry for our community members. And then, of course, participating in the House Bill 4002 work group. And it's really unclear, kind of where these things intersect, but everyone, including those who've been on the ECHO series that they've been providing on this, we're like, we really hope that some of our health center partners are going to apply for this grant specifically so we can be thinking about this population going forward and how to meaningfully help. So this is just a summary of this grant. We don't have a specific ask in mind yet. We don't have a plan, but we're going to get there here in the next couple of weeks. It's a quality improvement, so we can't use it. We shouldn't be looking to just sustain any work that we're currently doing. We really want to use it to improve outcomes and see what we can do differently. And then addressing just the critical health needs and the health related social needs that this population has. So the abstract is due on June the 10th. And the final application is due on July 2nd. So the timeline is pretty quick, but you're going to find out the next grant is faster. So we'll pause here really quick and ask if you have any questions or anything you want to go back and revisit here with this particular grant.
Just a question, will you get feedback after you submit that 10 June
No.
abstract? No, so it's not a letter of intent or anything, it's just a.
Yeah, just, it's our intent to apply essentially.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay, so it's not actually applying for the grant, it's saying that you are going to apply for the grant.
On June the 10th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it
That's-
probably
it's a
just gives their reviewers a
two-phase,
heads up
two-step,
about how to
yeah.
organize their review groups.
Yes.
Before they receive all the proposals.
And I imagine HRSA's had to hire some people to review all the applications that they're asking for in a very short window of time.
How competitive did we hear about this one?
So this one is, did we say?
There's $40 million grants, so 40.
40 in the whole pot?
Yeah.
Mhm.
But again, it's a QI grant, which we'll talk about the behavioral health expansion one next. It's quite a 400, is 400? Yeah, there's 400 of those that are going to be awarded. So quality improvement one is going to be a little bit more competitive, but also the applicant pool is going to be smaller because it is quality improvement work.
And not all sites are going to have carceral settings in their service areas. And so that narrows it a little bit. The reason we'll connect with Western and really think about that evidence base is, I believe from the TA, from HRSA, that they're looking at people who can understand an evidence base and then build upon it, but not necessarily have the answers. They're very clear, like, we know you've never done this before, but can you wrap your heads around an evidence base, be in the right place to do this, and then see if there's something you can impact. So I think that will help. And I think we do have that opportunity, but who else thinks that as well is a little bit of a mystery.
Well, there are so many Bureau of Justice Assistance grants too, and
Yes.
the better data that we have from.
Exactly,
something
we'll be
like
able to
this,
help with
then
other
it will give us a
additional
launch to
applications.
apply for other funds from federal government.
Yeah, I think that was the takeaway from our big group, internal Benton County group, was that there are so many things out there, and the health department's been engaged and the sheriff's office has been engaged. And so we figure at a minimum, going through the exercise of trying to find our place in that through this grant will be helpful to the whole ecosystem.
Oh, sorry.
Is carceral a real word?
Yes.
It is.
Okay.
We're having to learn a whole new
Yeah.
vocabulary, so apologies to our colleagues if we're still working
Yeah.
it out. But yeah, lots of new words, but that is the word they use.
Okay. 2-year period to use the money, one-time dollars is always a little scary, or you gear up for something, and I know it's early days, but any plan, I suppose there's always the potential of if it's working.
Yeah, so with this particular grant, which we kind of with the CMS 1115 waiver and then Oregon's 1115 waiver, I think that there's, this is a targeted population for both of those groups. And so I think really seeing how CMS is going to let us meaning provide service providers and communities spend those dollars going forward. I think we'll have actually a better foot in the door if we're able to go through this exercise over the next couple of years, just in terms of being a provider of choice or a partner of choice or an innovator of choice, to be able to work on leveraging funding, future funding opportunities with the 1115 waivers and anything else that may come out of this.
So one-time funding, but structures between 1115 and the 4002 that actually make this feel like it is ongoing work with other streams that are supporting it. So our learning is one time, it's 1 year, but this feels like an opportunity that has other trains going in the same direction. And so it could likely overlap at some point.
Yeah. So what all will it entail to apply for the grant? Just have time.
Yeah, just our time.
Research,
Yeah.
writing.
Editing.
And there's no match for the grant. It's just, no. Okay.
Okay, so our next opportunity is the HRSA Behavioral Health Expansion Grant. This was released on April 22nd, so just a couple of weeks ago. It's due on the intent to apply, so the first half of the application is due next Wednesday. And then the final application is due on June the 21st. And so I'll kind of dive in here.
Yeah, so same setup as we did with the other, just trying to give you the federal landscape. The behavioral health service expansion is something that the White House and people across the nation have been talking about, especially post-COVID. It has been a unity agenda item, so support on both sides of the aisles. And really, again, just acknowledging at a national level that there is disproportionate access and impacts because of that for Black and Brown communities. So the idea is to strengthen system capacity, connect people to care, and support healthier environments. That's what the federal level is doing. HHS has a really specific tool that they're encouraging us to look at and use, a roadmap for behavioral health integration. And so that talks about integrated services, looking at barriers, developing workforce, being realistic about system capacity, leveraging arrangements, and then focusing on promotion, prevention, and recovery, which are all things we can get behind. The big things that they pull out are these top 8 major challenges, which we see in our communities and guess that many other people also see in their communities. So the structure, the stigma, information to make the right decisions about where to invest, the ability to focus on promotion and prevention, and workforce challenges among some of those. So HRSA feels inclined to invest because they are acknowledging the 82.5 million adults who are living with a mental health condition or substance use disorder. That's 2021 data, but really also seeing that the future of youth and adolescents and kids doesn't look like it is going to be in a better place for those numbers to change without intervention, without intention. And so we know that many mental health and substance use needs aren't treated and have an opportunity to be part of, again, the expansion of those treatment services for communities, because left untreated, that can be debilitating and life-threatening.
So This award, there's 400 awards. It's a $1.1 million over the course of 2 years. So 500,000 in year one, 600,000 in year two. It is a new grant award. They have been telling us in the TA opportunities that depending on, which we'll talk about, like what the metrics are that they're going to be looking at with this award, if you meet those metrics, then it could be a new added to your base funding in the future. So potentially up to 500,000. Behavioral health, if you guys remember in some of the presentations we've given you over the last year and a half-ish, that the president's budget has been asking to include behavioral health services as a required component of community health centers. Primary care is the only required component of them. We are fortunate in that we're able to provide both, but this is an opportunity for us to leverage funding to help supplement that work going forward. And this timeframe is September to the end of August 2026. And of course, this is the first funding opportunity in the last 5 years, and there's no guarantee that this will be offered again. This may be their only opportunity to add funding for behavioral health services in the future.
So it's an access point.
Kind of, yes. And there's speculation.
That's how we're
that this is
interpreting
the
it.
access point.
Yeah.
We're not sure yet, though, so. These are the objectives of the service expansion grant, is that you have to increase the number of patients that are receiving mental health services. And they give us specifically where on our uniform data system metrics that they're looking at that number specifically that they want to see the increase of. And you also have to have an increase of patients receiving substance use disorder treatment. So that's how they're going to measure going forward. Of course, this kind of information is just interesting in community health centers across the United States. Only 27% of the estimated need for mental health services our health centers are providing. And then of those, only 6% of the needed SUD services are being provided. And we've requested all the data to be pulled so we can really look at in particular, our community and the patients that we serve in the community health center to see if we match up to what the national statistics are. We're hoping that we're a little bit better, but we can't guarantee that. So that will be part of the application.
Sorry, could you go
Yeah.
back one more? So that when you say that they're only meeting 27% of the estimated need, that's the estimated need of their population that they serve, not just the community's entire need.
No,
Okay.
yeah, the patient populations, yeah. So that would mean that, for example, they have a diagnosis of a mental health condition, but aren't getting treatment for that. And they have all that information because we give it to them every year painstakingly. Yeah. The opportunities here for the community health centers, of course, is that historically we serve underserved communities and populations. Again, this may be the first access point for this opportunity, and it may be the last one, which they're letting us know, and that community health centers provide a continuum of behavioral health treatment, which in the primary care setting, which allows us to be able to follow our patients well beyond discharge from any behavioral health services through primary care, and then refer them back into those behavioral health services as needed. So kind of keeps people on the radar.
So the funding can't be used for new sites. So if something isn't already part of your scope, you have to add it before you apply. You are allowed to have mobile units. So those are new sites, but a different type of allowance there. You can't use it to renovate. You can't add things unless they're already services or locations, unless you do that before this application comes. So those are the limitations. We mentioned a little bit that this funding may continue past the 2 years. It'll be based on success. We'll tell you what that looks like. And then additionally, if we are serving new patients, it's possible that we could have our current patients, just have more access, more appointments, more treatment, or we could bring people in to primary care and provide them behavioral health, mental health, and substance use treatment. So it could go either way. If you do add new patients, HRSA has told us it's possible we will add that to your continual target because you have then brought them in and now it is your ability, responsibility to do that in an ongoing way. And so those are the two things we're looking at in terms of where this goes in the future, because there is much more talk about the future of this funding than there is with some other opportunities like our quality improvement fund.
So just really quickly, sorry, I'll get to your question, but in terms of, even though there's 400 awards and some of the language here being really important, is that behavioral health services has to already be included in your services that you provide within your scope. And so it really limits a lot of community health centers to even apply. If they're not already providing those services, they would have to go through the process of getting it added in scope, and that takes about 120 days already. And so there's not really even 120 days from the time this was posted to now to be able to do that. So they do recognize that it's limiting in terms of who all can apply.
So my question was about that, services that are not added to your scope for submission. Is that just the whole bucket of behavioral health, or is that specific services within behavioral health?
So HRSA is pretty loose in terms of what they describe as, they call it mental health, behavioral health services are mental health services, and then also SUD and MOUD services. And so they don't have to be specific, but we'll talk about what we specifically have in the scope here.
As long as we have that, then this can just expand
Yes.
our capacity.
Yeah.
So what we do have in scope is our behavioral health consultants, which are part of our primary care teams, and they are integrated into our clinic sites. And then behavioral health services is also in scope for the community health center. This is a little bit of a snapshot of a past, these things are always evolving, but this is an org chart that we've submitted to HRSA with a previous application. And it shows you that, under the Deputy Director of Behavioral Health Services for substance use and MAT or MOUD, which is what it's being called now, Children and Families, Supported Employment, Housing, PEERS Act, and ESA are the in-scope services. So those are the things we've already identified that HRSA knows we're doing. And the opportunity is to build out between the behavioral health consultants and the behavioral health services, some expanded access and opportunity.
So out of scope, to say it out loud, crisis, jail, and forensics. Yeah. And then this is where we already provide behavioral health services. These are all the listed locations. So it does give you the opportunity to add mobile clinics. So you can add that as an outreach site. But these are the areas in which we already provide behavioral health services. And then in the CHC, so these are our in-scope services that we have listed. And so you can see there the mental health services, substance use disorder services, and then the specialty care under psychiatry.
And so we are still diving into the information, but what we know specifically is that our success will be based on three things. These are two of them. It's the UDS table 5 line 20, so looks at total mental health services, and then the UDS table 5 line 21, which looks at substance use disorders. So when we've had our data team pull that, we were looking at number of visits and staffing, and all of this is available in chart form if that is better for your processing, but it's really hard to present here. So the summary of what that looks like is that our staffing for total mental health services is less, had increases for a couple years in 21 and 22. Our clinic visits have continued to increase, and our number of patients is pretty steady. So that's what we were working a baseline, because that's the baseline that HRSA is identified for us. That's for 2023. In terms of the substance use disorder services, we see a slightly higher FTE in 2021. Typically, we've had between 5 and 6 people in other years. In 2021, we had 7.5 FTEs. Our clinic visits are also increasing, and it's only 82 less than when we were at our highest staffing rate now. And so I think that tells a little bit of a story of the consideration for FTE staffing and need, but also our capacity to do some of the work and to want to really dig in to see where we've been most effective to do the work. And our substance use disorder team saw 77 more people in 2023 than 2020, again, with less staffing. But we would be looking at what those successes are and what those places to build and support would look like, given what we know from 2023, as well as setting goals for the future that were meaningful, possible. They haven't told us it's an increase of 5% or 50%, just that it has to be an increase. And then when you break down, there's a table as well. This is the third place that they'll look at in our UDS data. It's really about who's providing those services. So you can see that most of these services are being provided by physicians, with PAs and nurse practitioners coming in second. We do have licensed clinical social workers and psychiatrists who are contributing to those numbers. There's a handful of other staff as well, but the numbers were lower. And then we are able to support with this funding a whole slew of folks, from everybody that's listed there already to other licensed mental health providers, psychiatrists, psychologists, and our physician's assistants. So we could be putting funds and services into any of those staff groups.
So we met on, we've participated in several different learning opportunities with HRSA on the 7th of May, which I guess was just last week, maybe, not sure. But we met with our Benton County stakeholders, which include, our health department, the behavioral health team, substance use disorder team, finance, our BHC, behavioral health consultants that are integrated in the primary care, and then a handful of staff from the community health centers. Again, we have these kind of ongoing connections and conversations going on as well, but this one's a pretty quick turnaround, and it's really only about expansion. So we don't have to get too specific in terms of what our deliverables are, because we know it has to just be increase in services. So this is, again, just kind of a quick summary of the grant. A 2-year time frame, $1.1 million. We have to have an increase in people who are accessing in these very specific areas from our 2023 data to 2025. And then if we meet that, we're hopeful that we'll be able to have some continued ongoing funding. So that's this is the timeline again, and that's everything. So any questions that you guys have?
Would you translate UDS?
Yes, that's our uniform data system. And that is what we have to report to the federal government. And it just, for health centers, community health centers, and it looks at, it's a very complicated, looks at everything about our patients, all their diagnoses and all the services that they provide from an aggregate level, not
What's important about it also is that it is then uniform across all community health centers. So you can start comparing apples to apples, right? So that everybody has to pool their information, at least for HRSA, in one shared way so that we can talk about comparisons across the country.
And if successful in one or both of these grants, what does that do to staffing? I mean, does that mean?
So in our initial conversation, specifically around behavioral health expansion with the team of people, we definitely talked about some wanting to look at some specific staffing types possibly to use the funding for. So prescribers in particular. Child psychiatry being one area that would really help meet a need in children and families and expand access in our community. I don't know that there's much of that available in the community at large, but then also looking at, if it is the psych and P position, again, having that be on board and expanded prescriber. We've also talked about particular provider type that supports SUD services. I'm trying to remember what the term is, but a physician for that. And then they've also talked about, getting some same day immediate access primary care providers available, or expanding our behavioral health, our behaviorist team to be able to have a full-time behaviorist like in Monroe, which is a really more busy space that doesn't have all the supported services available. So this one definitely will be, we're looking at potentially using this funding for prescriber level positions or service level
They're
positions.
really limited in the community, and that's been
Yeah.
a big challenge for a variety of organizations.
And a prescriber generates their own income
Right,
after a
yeah.
while, right? Like it's a revenue
Okay.
generation
Yeah,
space. So no, you said all the words, just that's the one that's important to keep in mind, that those are the people who would be sustainable, because when you offer the service, you're paid for the service.
That was the other side of my question, is just hiring skilled people and then say, well, we don't know about, I mean,
Yeah.
you got a job today, but sometime in the medium future, we're not sure. And that seems like an added challenge to getting good people.
And I think another thing that we've learned over the last 6 months as we've gone through our PPS rate renegotiation is that doing both of these grants, if we get awarded them, would give us the opportunity. This is what we would cause for a change in scope. This is a new service level, higher service level. So we could go back and apply for a higher reimbursement rate to help offset the cost going forward if this is successful. So we're learning lots of things, how to leverage future funding and be able to sustain services. So,
Thanks.
yeah.
I'm excited because I know how much integration is needed in these spaces. It's interesting to me that I think it was the first grant, the quality improvement grant, also requires that you work with at least 2 community-based organizations. And there's just that need for linkage across the different silos in this area. So I think these are a real opportunity. We can learn a lot, and just with caution about hires, of course, but especially on the second grant, with the opportunity to convert that to part of the community health center space. That sounds like a great opportunity, and it's very timely.
Mhm. So I think there is 2 action items here for you all. I believe it was written in the, right, just because we need your formal endorsement to be able to apply.
Another question, so in the different staffing types you mentioned, do you foresee some of those being harder to hire than others?
So definitely, what we don't necessarily want to do is, we're not looking to bring in more QMHPs, right? Because we don't want to compete with that, looking at those. So the clinical or the pediatric psychiatry would be a difficult one. But we're also able to use the funding creatively. So you can, we'd have to work with human resources and a lot of other things, but we could use this for sign-on bonuses for this particular one, trying to find ways to make a limited duration position seem more, like a lucrative opportunity. Yeah, attractive opportunity for.
And the low
individual.
reimbursement for providers is helpful to us, right? People can qualify for certain programs within community health centers that you can't within the sort of general standard healthcare setting. And so that helps us. It doesn't mean it makes it less difficult, but it does add a helpful piece to it.
And that psychiatric nurse practitioner, I think, would be a really good position. That's the base position. We've had one in the past.
We have,
yeah.
We don't now.
We don't currently, yes.
Yeah, our staff were very interested in talking about the behavioral health consultant, building that team back to a place it had been, as well as the psych NP. Both of those are things we've done in the past that we don't have currently. So as possibilities go, those were things that people were excited to explore.
Any further questions?
I'll move to approve submittal of a CHC Behavioral Health Services Expansion Grant application.
Second.
All in favor, please signify with an eye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So that's one of them, right?
Yes.
The other one.
The other one. I'll move to approve submittal of the Transitions in Care for Justice Involved Populations Grant application.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, please indicate with an eye.
Aye.
Wonderful, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation.
Presentation was very well organized and easy to follow. Thank you.
You're welcome. Christine does a great job of organizing information for folks, so. give her-
She's a rock star.
Up next, we have discussion of potential action regarding right-of-way acquisition. Laurel.
Takes a lot of time to set those up. A good one. Good morning, Commissioners. Rachel Ritt.
Good morning.
Thank you for entertaining Vance and I. Vance will be here anyways.
So I'll kick it off, but I'll quickly pass it over to Laurel. So this is essentially the kickoff for potential eminent domain proceeding involving a very thin, short strip of property that would be the final connecting piece in the Corvallis to Albany utility and path. So last week you all had a presentation from Owen Miller. Owen. And explaining I guess the status of the project, and you accepted some easements. This is the last strip. Trillium Family Services owns the property across which this strip is located, and despite Laurel and her team's dogged and diligent efforts, apparently their corporate policy is they do not negotiate sale of easements or property for this sort of activity and force the government to go through eminent domain proceedings. So what you have before you is the resolution of necessity. It's identical in format to what you did for the McFadden property. It is required by statute. It sets out the justification, the public interest, and what the property would be used for. Once the resolution of necessity has been adopted, then the 40-day last best offer goes out to the property owner. We have engaged Kevin Shuba. Kevin Shuba will handle this process again. And we've got our fingers crossed that might generate some negotiation and some conversation from Trillium Family Services. If not, it puts us in a position to file the eminent domain action in circuit court. Obviously, if that happens, all bets are off. We don't know what will happen. I can say with a high degree of certainty that we will end up with the property. It's just when. It's really an inconsequential piece of property. I fully expect this to be resolved under the radar and pretty easily. But again, Trillium forces governments to jump through all the necessary hoops before it will engage in meaningful conversations. So anything to add, Lauren?
Just as for the background, like Vance mentioned, we have been trying to coordinate and meet with people. The original offer went out in January 2023. We met on site with the site super, with one of the manager of the site, as well as the like a vice president. I know I'm looking at you like you were there.
I was there.
Yeah, actually, that's true. Commissioner Malone was there. Yes. And so we kind of gathered their concerns and submitted new plans and an approach to address those concerns, and still never heard back. So it really is kind of a stalemate right now as far as the attorney or any of the on-site staff even talking to us anymore. And I've heard that ODOT, when they were going through for the US Safety Improvement Project, they had to go through the exact same process. In fact, they just were successful in completing negotiations just only 2 weeks ago, and their project's been done for a year. So it's just kind of part of their process, unfortunately.
So I was going to bring up ODOT, because I'm pretty sure they did the project before they had the agreement. Which
Yeah, they had to file in court, right? And then so they put their offer down and then had to go through the,
So they had ownership.
yes.
Right, that would be subject to a motion for immediate possession, much like we have done with Mr. McFadden's property. Which leaves then, as you know, the only outstanding issue to be litigated is how much the government will pay for that strip land.
As a nonprofit, I find it really
Yeah.
odd that Trillium takes this stance. It's,
Hmm.
yeah.
Well, I thought we had a good discussion last September
Mhm.
and in their first question was, well, you're stopping on the east side of our property. Why don't you just stop it on the west side? And no, this is a path to Albany. So that, they didn't even have that concept. And a narrow strip doesn't really affect their operation, and they were concerned about a driveway and having enough room, and I assume.
Yes.
So the real questions have been, I think, successfully answered, and then, well, come play legal games with us, because we must have a lot of lawyers on staff that aren't very busy, and I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. But I am concerned about any further delays in actually getting contract awarded and getting some pavement done this season.
Yeah, and we are still planning on moving forward, well, depending on today, I guess I should say, because we have opportunities to modify the contract, but we are going to at least bid the portion that we have already acquired. We want to get that piece constructed this summer/fall. And so depending on what happens with this last piece of property is how if we do or don't include it within the contract. I don't know how to explain that better, but we have opportunities to draft up language in the contract. So that way the contractor knows this is where I can do work. Yeah, maybe hold off over here. So,
But ODOT didn't hold off.
No, but we,
But they still have the same opportunity. Once you get to a certain point in the litigation and you get the motion and the order for immediate possession, you can get onto the property and construct. And I would expect that to be in place toward the end of this summer. If we end up actually filing pleadings, Kevin would then submit his motion. So it's entirely possible that this contract with the statement of work will include this stretch as phase 2 or phase 3, whatever, and that it will be done by the contractor, but only at such point in time that we either have it's an easement, right? Not a deed. Easement, or we have the motion and the order in place allowing access. So
right.
I would expect that to happen, just maybe not sequentially.
is this easement outside of their current fence?
Most of it, there's some fence that we are impacting. We revised the design a little bit, so there would be less impact to the fence.
Because they just put in that fence a couple of years ago, right?
Yeah, well,
To
yeah.
cut down all the
And-
trees.
And they did tear out the trees. They were diseased, my understanding. And so was that their arborist recommendation. But the fence itself, like the state had to actually take out they had some wrought iron, like fancy fence, like by the main entrance that the state had to remove. So we really are impacting some of the chain link, but as part of the negotiations, we would compensate them for that impact, so.
Okay.
And the initiating this, going through eminent domain, they are still getting paid. We're not
Oh, yeah.
just.
Yes,
Thank you
absolutely.
for free. Yes.
Yeah, no.
Can I ask, I just would like a little bit of information on a slightly different but related topic. Are we going to be talking about the other end of the bike path at some point?
Yeah, we discussed that the other day, actually the chair and I, about just having more, kind of an overall update on the whole path that we could bring to a Board of Commissioners meeting.
Absolutely.
And as we said, like the big map right now.
Yeah.
So we're able to kind of really do an overview of, is this going to take 10 years? Is it going to take 5 years? You know,
And just, yeah, there's a lot, some community concern at the other end. And
Yeah, and then in the North Albany section, yes. And we've met with ODOT staff on that, and I'm still kind of waiting for some more information from them. So I'd love to hold that, information session with the board after I kind of have the full picture.
absolutely.
I think part of what's confusing is that when people ask us for status updates, it's hard for me to remember which segment is being funded by
Tell
whom.
me about it, I know.
And who the lead entity is, because we're not the lead for all of the segments either.
Right.
Yeah. So that'd be great.
Yeah, not only a map, but a spreadsheet.
Yes, that's what I was
Yeah.
asking Owen for.
Yeah.
It's a spreadsheet that,
Perfect.
by segment that gave funding and lead agency and
Status. and
county role and
timeframe.
status. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
And we still have some funding for the North Albany section.
We do, we put a pause on it right now, though. But we do have, there's around $2 million for construction.
Okay.
And we were at the point of trying to go through and do appraisals and negotiations with property owners out there. But like I said, we had to put a pause.
Is there a time limit on keeping that funding?
So,
Or-
yes, generally our IGAs with ODOT last 10 years. And so, but this one, we've actually had it on the book for about 8. So if we can't move forward with it, we'll have to ask for an extension. So, yeah.
Clock, when you said
Tick,
10
tick.
years. Oh,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, the North Albany section had been the priority, but then when the state received their large package of funding for the US 20 corridor, we had to shift because we really needed to focus on, acquiring and designing the path next to the state highway improvements to make sure that the two could commingle and not have a problem, in the future. So right now, when you drive out there, you can kind of tell where the path is going to be. It's pretty clear and should be a lot easier to construct. It'd be way easier to construct this year than next year because, dealing with weeds and all those good things growing. So it's our intent to move forward.
Good.
Okay. So then North Albany segment, are we the lead?
So it is actually an ODOT contract with the consultant, but it's our project. So it's ODOT led, they're managing the project, but they still, they defer to us pretty much all the time, but they're paying, the consultants, and they would be paying the contractor. The contract would be with ODOT rather than us.
We are the project manager in essence.
Yeah. But the state has their own project manager.
Yeah.
And ODOT did something in the middle section, Granger and Independence.
So Independence, they made sure, I sat in a lot of meetings because there's that huge retaining wall on Independence. So they ended up actually installing a portion of the path along there. Just so, because their charge was, we don't want to, interfere, if something that we build is all of a sudden made the path a no-go because of, right, exactly, then they haven't done their job, making sure that they're working with us as a coordinated agency. So we went through and they made sure that, hey, we're gonna go point A to point B, so here's your your opportunity to do that. We still have to maintain that section. So that's part of their requirements. ODOT doesn't want, they want the path, right? But they don't want the path. They don't want to maintain it, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
No. Thank you.
Ask me how I know that.
Okay, are there more questions for Laurel or Vance?
No, but I'll just deliberate a little bit, which is, of course, I don't take eminent domain lightly. you know, I would feel different about this if it was a family's property that had, you know, a nice fence in their prize winning rose bushes and their kids, you know, playground and stuff. But as Commissioner Ojo mentioned, it is a nonprofit and it doesn't sound like we're gonna be making any impacts to their property really besides chain link fence, which we're gonna compensate them for. And in the end, this is a greater contribution to the public. So that's why I will be supporting it. But I do also still have concerns about the North Albany section.
Yes.
And that's a different topic for another day.
I'll move to adopt resolution number R 2024-007, resolution of necessity.
Second.
All in favor, please signify with an eye.
Aye.
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 Thank you very much. I appreciate the support. I know this project has been going on for a long time. It really is an important project for the community. And so I know we will have more conversations coming forward. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Laurel. Okay, moving on. Next up is Maura Kwiatkowski and Erica Milo, board meeting management platform update. Are you gonna present from there?
No, I'm just shifting the shares.
Got it. You get to emerge from behind the curtain.
Whoa, what if we actually got a curtain? Yeah. We could like change it out seasonally, you know, decorate.
Oh, I had to close the other one out. and just keep it.
Yeah, I would like to ask for just a couple. You turn your microphones back on, please.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, we are back in
Sorry.
session and continuing our agenda with item 5.2.
So we're here to update the board about our progress towards acquiring a meeting management platform for Benton County.
Oh, yeah.
I should know that by now. And we're not. Okay.
Yeah, I'll do it if I will. Go ahead, Erica. There we go. Did you do that or did I?
Sorry about that. It's a little tricky presenting it. Doing it.
You did?
You did it with
Thank
your
you.
mind. Okay.
Mentally.
Telepathically.
Okay, so staff sent an invitation to bid to 3 vendors. Those were Civic Plus, Diligent, and Granicus. And all 3 of those sent us proposals. Next slide, please. A team from several departments evaluated the proposals and unanimously chose Civic Plus based on price, product features, compliance with the technical specifications, and their robust training and support program. Next slide. Then for due diligence, we checked their 3 Oregon references, which were the city of Forest Grove, the city of Redmond, and Tillamook County. And the references gave consistently positive feedback about Civic Plus. They mentioned that it was easy to use, that it saved staff a lot of time. They said that Civic Plus had excellent customer service, and overall that it was a worthwhile investment and they had no regrets. So that's what we were hoping to hear. And I'll turn it over to Maura.
So this is just a quick overview. This was in your packet of some of the components of the module that we're looking at currently. You'll see that one of those has been crossed out. It was a membership management component. Just for clarification purposes, Civic Plus does offer a comprehensive boards, committees, and commissions management module, which includes everything from a standardized online application process to self-scheduling for interviews, managing term notices. It's the ability to manage the entire process in one place. That is an additional cost module, and Civic Plus recommended that we move forward with meeting management prior to implementing the boards, commissions, and committees. So their original proposal had a component, this membership management, so we removed it, which reduced our cost for the meeting management platform. But it is something that I think if we find ourselves highly satisfied with Civic Plus and the way the management platform is working, that we may want to consider implementation of this other management module. I think it'll streamline the process and make it much easier for community members who want to serve and for the board that are trying to make selections for the best qualified candidates for those boards. Our implementation timeline is approximately 27 weeks. I won't go through everything here, but this is sort of a phased look at how Civic Plus implements. But this will include, uploading historical files, setting up the templates for the agendas, the minutes, and just a lot of that background work, staff training, some training for the board, although our understanding is that for you all, it's relatively minimal because you will have your own portal where you can log in, and if you want to record notes on certain items or make a list of questions you may have, you'll have a space where you can do that.
And it'll create a record, actually. Record, right?
It's private to you,
yeah.
but it does create a record. And we can pull it out in response to a public record request.
Yes, and it creates a record in the sense that if I'm taking notes on a hard copy of a document this is considered a county record.
Mhm.
And that is, in the record already and don't have to create another record.
Easier to access, right? For
So
sure.
easier to access, but also easier for staff, because I remember when Annabelle Jaramillo retired, staff having to go through all of her documents as to what was official record and what was not, what could be just recycled. And that was an arduous process. So anything can ease some of that is helpful.
Yeah, definitely. And this would be a way to do it. And it also provides sort of an electronic workspace for you all to gather your thoughts right there with your agenda and your documents. And, you know, you can make a list of questions or make a list of notes or, so it's sort of a one-stop shop for you all in terms of your preparation. So hopefully that you'll find that to be a nice feature, but they did indicate that it's a very easy process for the board members.
Did you get that in writing?
Well, I don't know if we
Essentially.
take that call. I think we may have a recording of that Teams meeting, so. So our go live date we're looking at is January 21st, 2025. And we chose the state to be conservative. Implementation will probably take us into the fall. And given, you know, we have a lot going on in the fall. We of course have a presidential election, a new commissioner, AOC conference, holidays. So just a whole lot of things going on. So, and then the first meeting in January is always kind of a different one with changing chairs, swearing in folks, doing all of our first meeting of the year type of work. So this would be the third meeting of the year. So we thought that that would probably be sort of the best one to shoot for. We want to make sure that everybody's fully trained and that the staff understands how it works. So again, that's why we're just being a little more conservative with an implementation date. I didn't put this information on the slide, but just to share this information with you. Our first year implementation cost is $22,000. Our second year implementation cost would decrease to 18. And because implementation includes cost for training, historical file upload, that sort of thing. And then starting at year 3, there will be a 5% annual uplift charge. So 5%, 18,000 plus 5 for year 3. So it's sort of almost like we want to look at it as an inflationary factor. It's in there. The Board of Commissioners Department budget, we do have some available funding in contracted services that was earmarked for another initiative that is not getting used now. So we should be fine for our first 2 years of implementation, and then it'll be specifically built into the budget as a standing budget item if we find that as a county and as a board, you all are satisfied with it.
And in theory, this should save time and make this more efficient. And the other question I have is that it also will streamline the processes in terms of minutes and making those minutes available on a more ready basis to community members as well. And
Yes.
And it'll integrate well with the website.
Yeah, IT has looked at those aspects and they felt confident that Civic Plus could meet their specifications. And yeah, one of the nice things about the documents we upload, such as minutes, the community will be able to keyword search those. So if they want to go landfill, I just want everything with landfill, they can do that. Yeah.
And we will be working to upload historical documents. It is not just a matter of starting at this point and going forward. And the upload of historical documents will be an ongoing thing. But some of that upload, we hope to be able to do some batch uploading as part of our implementation process. So we'll see how that rolls out and how much of that we can get done. But the documents have already been, the documents we've placed into our Laserfish permanent record storage have already been OCR'd for for searchability. So that part's already done, but we have some file renaming to do based on Civic Plus requirements for file configuration, that kind of thing. So, but we are hoping to be able to do some batch work to do that in some chunks.
Any concern, the three Oregon jurisdictions that use this system are much smaller than we are? Is that a concern?
No, I mean, Civic Plus is used at some other jurisdictions throughout Oregon. Lane County uses them, Lynn uses them to a certain extent. We asked each vendor to provide 3 references. They provided these 3, and so those were the 3, for purposes of equity, we checked those 3. But we had done some background work of our own, looking at where else these vendors were in Oregon. And Civic Plus is by far the most widely used across the state.
And it's a national company.
And it's a national company. The program was developed by a former city clerk.
Great.
And I just wanted to add, where the contract is being worked on or soon to be worked on, we're really hoping we can start implementation in June.
Yeah, the process, we'll start meeting with they'll assign us an implementation manager who will begin working with us to lay out our process.
And most of the contract will be able to come from, because community development negotiated to get the Muni code piece, which is also from Civic Plus. So we're hoping that, a lot of that can just transfer over and it won't be a huge issue.
Yeah, that was the other question I was going to ask. I thought we had another contract with Civic Plus already as a county.
Yeah, so a lot of the specific terms negotiation is already complete.
Yeah.
So we're pretty close to sending a contract out to.
Awesome.
Any other questions?
Yay, I'm super excited.
We are too. We will keep you updated as things move along.
Well, appreciate the thoughtful process. I mean, this has been in the works for a while, and nice to see it coming to fruition.
Yes.
And obviously we'll update you of any delays. 37 weeks, 27 weeks is a long way away. So we'll know what kind of shape we are in the fall.
Yeah, and 27 weeks is approximately 6 months, so end of November, early December, but again, that's why we wanted to give ourselves a little bit of a buffer there in terms of, and again, the January 21st is not hard and fast, but that's kind of our goal, and giving ourselves a 30 to 45 day buffer for any delays or hiccups or anything. But yeah, they were able to meet all the specifications. Our IT team specifically, they prepared the technical specifications for the vendors, and the IT members of the evaluation team all scored Civic Plus highest as well. It was unanimous across the evaluation committee, which was, had representation from across the county, and including 3 representatives from IT.
Nice.
Sounds great.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Okay. The next item on our agenda is discussion of county resource naming policy. And we have talked about this relatively recently, but it has come up again in the context of the acquisition of 4185 Southwest Research Way, and whether we want to continue to call it Children and Families Mental Health Center, or whether it gets some other name, or and we also have talked about the fact that we'd like to acknowledge Speaker Rayfield and his generous contributions to the county, and this is one of those contributions that he has made, and so where and how we'd like to do that. To provide just a little bit of context, and then I'm going to pass it to Rachel.
Okay. We have those documents of the counties.
They're
in the packet. I'm sorry. Right. I'm having.
So in the packet, we have a handful of documents: our own naming policy, Lane County's naming policy, and Clackamas County's naming policy.
Yep.
And the For context, and I think I've mentioned this before in board meetings, the USGS, the national naming folks that name geographic features, have a policy for not naming any buildings any further, or any places after people. And then the state, I think, also follows that guidance. Well, they have to, I think, for any place names. But when it comes to buildings or such, every building owner has the prerogative to name however they want to. In terms of these examples, Lane County has a policy that they, except in extraordinary circumstances, they don't name buildings after living people. But Clackamas and our own naming policy doesn't have any such caveats. And there are reasons for that kind of policy. I'm gonna pass it on to Rachel. She's seen instances where that's a problem.
It is a problem in just learning, traveling around Oregon. I do see parks named after former governors and former long-term members of Congress who have been super, super helpful with establishing funding for some of these important groups. There are also many examples where we've had to, across the country, where we've had to rename buildings due to unfortunate, maybe a scandal, maybe some sort of real reason of something in the past. We're also seeing that with some of our historical figures in the past across the country. A few years ago, it was very uncommon that statues were asked to be taken down because of slave ownership or some past issues. So it's important to note that, it's the good with the bad and things that factor in, and that's really the risk, but at the same time, we do understand that in particular, Representative Rayfield has been a champion to Benton County and is really going to have a lasting mark on this community of funding that it was never imaginable before. We are taking on some of the we probably are taking on the largest infrastructure plan that this county has ever seen. That was also just because we had not invested in infrastructure for so many years in our county buildings. So it's just an important note to look at. It was something that was brought up probably a few weeks ago as we were discussing things. And we felt that goal setting was a good place to have this conversation, as well as we're going to be having a grand opening of this beautiful building right across here. And there's a great opportunity there. And many of the key folks who helped secure that funding will be there. And, I know Commissioner Malone has a lot to say about Representative Rayfield and what he's been able to accomplish. And we don't want to underestimate that as well. So.
This seems appropriate to recognize Representative Rayfield's contribution to significant contribution to Benton County. And you mentioned the downside. I guess I don't necessarily think that building names are perpetual. I mean, I think I'm a fan of freshening things up once in a while, and you have a name on a building that nobody recognizes, or in some cases there's find out more about their history. So I don't see that as a serious drawback. That I don't think that's going to be an issue. Representative Rayfield has pretty good track record so far, and I expect that to continue. So.
So I mean, the other point that I think it's really important is just from a navigational standpoint for all of our county buildings. We can name everything we want, but we still have to understand what the meaning is. It's like our courthouse is our courthouse, our emergency operations center will be called an EOC, and this building is the Children and Families Building, because people need to navigate on Google Maps or whatever we use. So I just also want to understand, even if we did name a building after it, the understanding for the general public to navigate our services would remain Children and Family Services, so people are able to find them immediately. So it's almost, something I think that's really important. So, because again, if there's no connection with the name, they don't understand it. Similar to this building, right? So how people navigate it will be also very important. So.
And I thought of that, but this building has so many departments in it. It was hard to, like, you don't want to call it it's the BOC CD elections of assessment, like, you kind of need a name, but for a building that's going to have more of a narrowed down purpose, I think that's more appropriate. And me personally, it's nothing against anybody. I just prefer in general not to name buildings after people unless they've been deceased for 2 years.
How
How long?
2 years at least, just.
So they're really dead.
Yep, and just in case something comes out of the woodwork that you weren't expecting. I don't know. I agree that Rep. Rayfield, former Speaker Rayfield, should be acknowledged for his service to the community. Like I said before, I just don't feel like naming a building is the right method for that. I think a nice plaque inside the foyer would be a good option, and you can stand by it and say this, yay, celebrate this fact, So that's where I stand on it. The agenda today just says that we're discussing the naming policy, so I wasn't necessarily prepared to talk about naming the building, just points of our policy, so.
Yeah, and I think this is a great opportunity to get all of our thoughts and ideas out here, because we do have quite a few buildings that have the potential of having an additional name of some folks from this community who contributed so heavily to our story, right? Really our story. I do think that putting a time of when someone passes is also a little difficult, because, we've used examples of people taking down statues who were slave owners, things that we may find hundreds of years down there. But, coming from where I came from, I have seen stadiums have to be renamed. It happens.
Well, our school district just renamed, a couple years ago, several of the schools.
Right. But I mean, that could be part of the naming policy as well, that we can put in, that it can change, by an act of the Board of Commissioners. And, yep.
Just sorry to interrupt. I just, to Commissioner Wise's question, as I was looking at the policy that is Benton County's policy, it appears that it creates maximum flexibility
Yes.
for the Board of Commissioners. So everything that's being talked about here seems like it would fit under this policy. It's relatively broad. I will say, just for my own review of the policies that were put in, I appreciate getting the addition. I liked Clackamas counties. It seemed to have a little bit more process to it. Not that I'm processed to death, but it seemed to have a little bit more specifics in it. But I think, looking at our policy, it suggests, and I always look for those words like shall and may. It does seem to suggest that you would or shall appoint a group of applicable stakeholders to give you a recommendation on that. I don't know, again, I don't know what the tradition has been. So in terms of all of these different types of things that we have to name, obviously the first one being 4185, I guess that's kind of part of the question per our policy is that would we be appointing a specific group to do this? It does appear that you can possibly include current advisory boards or committees that may already be established. I know, looking at the Clackamas, one of the things I liked about the Clackamas policy was that, you know, a Board of Commissioner member was appointed as one of those ad hoc committee members. And that way they can sort of represent the interest of the three of you. So that was, but there's, it sounds like you have all kinds of flexibility.
Sure. I tend to be wary of the one commissioner there because one commissioner doesn't speak for all three commissioners, and depending on, you know, it's not just us, right?
But
It's not
it's-
just
they
three
still
of us.
make a
It's still, the Board of Commissioners still is the, has the final vote, and if they,
And I just worry about one commissioner steering or influencing too much that, you know. But again, I am just one commissioner, so that's just my feedback on
And-
that portion.
No, and
so.
again, I think that's why we wanted to have the discussion to find out what works best for you all.
and that's not our current policy.
Right.
Anyway, this
Yeah.
is Clackamas policy, so, you know, we really want to look at whether we want to make our policy a little bit more robust before we start naming all of these new buildings that are coming online. So that's the purpose for the discussion, because we know that this building down the street is not the only one that we will be naming. I do like, you know, some of the general language in pursuing the responsibility, in the Clackamas language. The Board of Commissioners shall avoid names that have the capacity to be construed as culturally insensitive or offensive, or duplicate existing geographic names that may confuse the public or create the potential for copyright infringement issues. I mean, it at least provides some sideboards, and ours doesn't really do that at this point. Also, ours is couched in the positive rather than in the negatives. And I think you kind of need both. The other element is that we've taken a very ad hoc approach so far into our naming. And we named the Calapooya building. We asked for suggestions for the building name from all county staff. And then we took a subset of those names and put them up on the website and had a survey that community members could weigh in on. And then we chose as the Board of Commissioners. So, you
Did
know,
Johan have a role in that too?
Johan had a role to play, yes, because what he did was he worked with David, making out his last name.
Yeah.
From the Confederated Tribes of the Siletz to review all of the Calapooya names that were on the list, because some of them were not really accurate.
Mhm.
And we wanted to make sure that if we chose a Calapooya language name, that it was appropriate and that we were spelling it correctly and that we were using it in a correct way.
Okay.
So yes, we did get great feedback from the Confederated Tribes of the Siletz Indians. Not Siletz, Grand Ronde. My apologies. The Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde. And then when we named the street, we didn't go through that extensive process. We looked at the other list and staff came up with a short list. And then it came to us and then to the city.
But I was gonna say, yeah,
So-
so ultimately the city's choice.
In
so
that one,
that's
it
why
was
we
the
did
city
it
choice,
differently.
but yeah, I think that it might be nice to have a little bit clearer process. That way staff
Yeah.
doesn't have to, come to us every time and ask, okay, what process do you want to use this time?
Right,
So,
right.
especially looking forward.
Well, we can do that. We were also having a discussion to bring to the group is we've named our meeting rooms, but there's absolutely no signage or context
Yeah.
for why we named them. So we've asked our BOC staff to look at, building some signage, nice signage to, when folks come in, they can actually read something on our white
Yeah.
walls. We have a lot of walls. Just to give some context to the why. And we haven't done it for this building. So there's also some process work that we need to do as well.
Yep.
Which would connect them. I also don't think I think it's great that we engage our workforce, but I mean, pound for pound, I feel like they're actually getting more of a say than maybe the folks in Benton County. We know that many of our employees do not live in Benton County. So, how we can engage the community even more for that direct impact might be another avenue that we need to consider.
Agreed.
When Zan talked about sideboards, I think that's a good idea. I'm fairly recently, the British Navy or some put out, name our new aircraft carrier. I mean, it was a significant. And the winner was Itsy Bitsy, silly name, and they were, I think, okay, you voted. And so having some guidelines, I think, would be a good idea, and maybe having commissioners having final say take care of something like that. But I guess social media worked its magic and anyway, a little more.
Yeah, I think we could put them on, people who've given significant contributions from Benton County or the world, I mean. We also have like an incredible research institution right here that is going to be, bringing out the best and the brightest and the engineers that are doing the work here. And they've also will leave a lasting contribution on it. So it's really, do we want a criteria? So it's not the itsy bitsy.
Yeah, the Lane County language is also more in the affirmative, to encourage names that reflect the county's history, geography, and diversity, recognition of individuals that have made a significant contribution or public contributions outside the county, but a direct connection to the county, to encourage sponsorship through funding or support. And then it also, their naming policy also covers the placement of memorials and donated objects, which we don't have a policy on that.
I couldn't find one.
Yeah, and we do, again, we may be considering that coming up as well, because of the district attorney's request to, and so I think that it would be great if we could integrate that into whatever policy we put together, because they all are, related in terms of criteria for not just wayfinding, but for naming and memorializing relationships.
Or just to kind of take a poll of our three commissioners, is there a policy that you lean towards in some of the other counties that we've identified that kind of line up with where the direction we should go in?
I mean, I like pieces, so I like, as Commissioner Ojo said, the policy guidelines. I think it's Clackamas, yep. So it's 5 policy guidelines, A, B, and C. In pursuing their responsibility, the BCC shall avoid names that, having those sideboards on there.
Yeah, I like elements of all three as well. Well, ours is pretty minimal, but I like elements of the other two in particular.
And then I guess so, I mean, in my mind, what else would we change? Would we want to always have it go to a committee? Would we want to just have that as an option?
Depends. So there's buildings, there's benches, there's roads, there's bridges, there's
Campground. Don't forget.
campgrounds, right? So, I mean, it depends. The world is our oyster in a way that we could get down to it, but it is like if someone wants to donate a bench in one of our county parks, do we need a policy for that? Is it that important? How much do we want to, there is an advantage of it being a little vague, right? Because it gives us that opportunity. And it does happen to us most recently with coming up with a road. And the road we chose, they felt that 911 dispatch would have a difficult time ordering out and getting folks to the road. So because of pronunciation, and we accepted that. I know.
We didn't really have a choice.
Right.
Is there also a way within the policy, I always like to where you give the board maximum discretion in terms of names. So again, it's always, what do you define? Is it a building, is it a piece of land, is it a park bench? You give them the broadest flexibility, but you don't lock yourself into, all right, you have to do it through advisory committee. You get a discretion to say that, okay, if this is a park bench, this is something that maybe we want to name. So that's always.
Right, and we do get land acquisition opportunities, and many times the family will say, we would love to give you this parkland. We'd love to have it also named after our father, you know.
Gives you the discretion to say, okay, we can do it this way, but if the board wants to go a different approach, then you have that in the policy. You have
Right.
I think
wiggle room.
it would be great to have a kind of a standard approach of creating an ad hoc advisory committee to do it, and it could include staff and, you know, stakeholders and, you know, community members. But to form that advisory committee at the discretion of the Board of Commissioners. Yeah, so, and because there are places and places, buildings and buildings.
Right.
But I do, in terms of even going from the park bench to the memorial plaque, it'd be nice to at least have some sort of a policy so that at staff level, you can say no to some of those things.
It would be.
Because you don't
That's what
want plaques all over the place.
Exactly.
No,
That's
but
what I've
there's
been
a,
thinking too, is, like, this is to unify, I don't know, to make things uniform. But also to make things easier for us, right? Like, so that we're not the only ones making the choices and how do we do this?
Some of it at
Back and
staff
forth,
level.
And yeah, making staff run around in circles every time,
we could
so.
also engage our county historical society, and if we had a county, do we have a county historian? Do we have someone as a designated county historian?
No, we rely on the Benton County Historical Society for
Right.
that kind of advice, but also our Historic Resources Commission.
Right, and so they kind of exist, the Historic Resources Commission, that we could add some responsibilities of naming or even having it as a pass-through. Even if the VOC
That's
does
a great
move
idea.
it. And so there's a process already that exists in planning to look at landmarks, new landmarks, and a naming issue, even if it is a modern, brand-new building that, yeah.
Did anybody look at the city of Corvallis's naming policy? I feel
I
like
think
it
we
was.
found one, did we have one?
They definitely have one and theirs is pretty set.
Mhm.
But I think the counselors still have the ability to,
Mhm.
they've named, you know, a bike path and some other stuff.
So my understanding, the direction would be is to create maybe a newer process and some pass-through and some options. And then also trying to lock in some of these policies that we've presented to you and kind of roll it up into something that's a little more meatier.
I think that would be great.
Meatier.
I'm
Right?
so hungry.
I'm sorry. No meat for you. No, but we will, so we will work on something and present it to you by probably next goal setting. Would that be fair? That give us 4 weeks. I will ask Vance and I will probably try to bring Petra in from planning to talk to and we'll talk to the Historic Resources, see if they have some ideas. Maybe we'll present to them and talk to them about. Right? No,
Inga's there.
Inga's the head, but I was Boston's, yeah.
When we were, had the opportunity to, what was it, name the new courthouse after the McFadden grandfather, we tasked David OSU library, married to
Rebecca Landis's husband.
yeah, Landis.
Yeah,
Isn't it David?
no,
Okay, Mr. Landis.
yeah, and I'm blanking on his name and for some reason. No,
Charles?
no.
Like, that's the only example I can think of.
Larry.
Larry, yep, tasking someone to do some research to make sure that grandfather was squeaky clean and that there weren't any negatives, but that was a little bit ad hoc, but that was the best person we could think of to do the research.
Well, and I think we have a responsibility to the public when they enter any of these buildings, that there is some context to why a building was named. And we could do better with signage. It doesn't have to be expensive at first. It can, you know, and then, but we can really build on that, so.
No, I like.
It's a learning lesson for the public, you know, it's a learning opportunity for folks to go into our lobby and have a little context.
Well, there was some rationale, like in this building, but People walking in know that.
Yep.
And, we need to fix that. Thinking of behavioral health building, it may not always be the behavioral health building. We have been known to move people around, or it's no longer the right size building, or so. Just back to this doesn't have to be permanent or perpetual. That it's, we think it's appropriate now, and somebody could change their mind at a later date. So.
I mean, we're right off Southwest Research Way, and there's not a ton of research happening
Anymore.
on this anymore, but
That was
right,
the
the
intent.
intent was it was supposed to be this area, and it changes, so.
And technology loop.
And the technology loop, which, yeah, so, and that's okay, you know, maybe it is a snapshot, you know.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I think you captured my wishes in terms of having staff come back and bring something to us that's a little bit more robust and that can give us flexibility at the same time.
And I'll just say too, I think Rick maybe touched on this a little bit, or maybe you did too, but making sure that there is some flexibility for commissioners. Like, I like the other sources as determined appropriate by the Board of Commissioners under the, 2 acceptable sources for names. To a 4th bullet point. If we want to say something like, hey, could you guys look into how many structures are named after men versus women and take that into consideration, I'd like for us to have some kind of flexibility in what we ask.
Oh, yeah.
Just a quick question in terms of process check with the policy. So part of the work will be to bring the policy back, a little bit more robust policy that meets the needs. In the meantime, with, and I only ask this just because I know I'll get questions as it relates to public works and signage and things like that for the new building. Are we going to wait until the policy is completed,
Well,
or?
no, I think it is the Children and Families Building, right? I mean, that's, right? I mean, that's what it's called, isn't it? I mean, isn't that? How do you I just literally go, how do you navigate it on Google, or like if you were?
Yeah, well, according to our policy, it says it's our decision.
I know, but I mean, how does
No, yeah.
that look in, right? So
Well,
people,
it would be-
what's the plain language?
The Children and Families Building, I think, is the logical one for the purposes of wayfinding and people to actually know what's in that building.
Yeah,
Especially since at this point it has a focus. But, again, we have Sunset Building that has multiple different purposes, with Calapooya Building with multiple purposes. So it could also be so-and-so's Children and Families Building, so.
I guess I would maybe caution a little bit on the Children and Families Building, just because I know that that's the group that's there now. But remember, you are going to expand this building down the road, and it won't be just a Children and Families Building. You will have probably a lot of it'd be more of a behavioral health building going forward. So that's the only thing I would say, that wall, the purpose of this was to enable our Children and Family Services to relocate into this new building so that we had space to provide children and family services. There are also more opportunities in the future once we make decisions around the current tenants.
Well,
No, I think that's fine. I think that's.
So do we need to hold off then on some like official naming of it and just kind of have an interim name, which is?
we need an interim names for wayfinding.
Yeah.
The why, you're right? I
And
mean,
again, there's no problem in naming it that way now and then changing it down the road. I get questions in terms of building the sign so that there's signage out there like we have here with Calapooya Facilities is wanting to, what do we say? It's just, and we can continue to hold off, but obviously it's nice to be able to put the signage that people know that this is a Benton County building, not NERSA.
and it's the exterior that's important,
Yeah.
This is your Board of Elections, this is your, right?
Right.
Okay, so
That's a different project.
When it comes to, we have a consensus that we'd like to see a new naming policy or an updated naming policy come back to us. But what we don't have a consensus on is what we want to call 4185 Southwest Research Way building.
Right, and it wasn't on the agenda
No.
anyway.
But we have a practical issue.
We have a timing issue
And
too.
a timing issue. So do we need to make any decision in that regard today? Commissioner Wise is correct. It wasn't noted that way on the agenda, but
Right, but now we realize we have another problem, and we have a May 31st, 30th.
Yeah. Open house.
Open house, so
Don't know that, I mean, again.
We won't have signs by then.
Yeah, and when you have a current policy in place, it sort of suggests, I mean, again.
Well, and so, I mean, sorry to interrupt you, but like, it's an open house, it's yay, they're moving in, they're expanding it. I mean, the focus can be where this is where the program is, and a focus on expanding the program, not necessarily a focus on, and yay, we got this building, but not necessarily
so it's a
we're
county
naming
name.
the building at that time.
I don't know if there's any, I mean, again, it's always nice, but I don't know if there's any urgency around the May 31st date. I think really it's just gets back to, okay, we've got this new building, and how do we, from a service standpoint, how do we make sure people know Benton County is here and it's not NERSA anymore?
Yeah.
And so I think that, there's obviously some need and urgency to want to make sure that we're
Yes.
communicating well, being transparent too. Sorry.
I just wanted to throw something into the mix in terms of knowing that it's a Benton County building is, we do have an exterior backlit sign on our building here now. And it was this, I know it's on the smaller side, but it was designed to the city requirements for signage. So, if you wanted to, identify the building as a Benton County building, we do sort of have a prototype that's already been spec'd. We have a vendor who provided it, so in the interest of some expediency.
And branding.
And branding, might you want to replicate what's
Yeah.
on this building? Because the work has already been done, the design, the backlighting, the vendor who provided it installed it, so I just don't know if that might accelerate.
Yeah.
Help you with that.
I think that makes sense. And we did invest quite a bit of time and effort in the wayfinding for this building. So, yeah. We should make use of what we have. And that was just generic Benton County, right? So, yeah.
Right,
was just,
at least
what can they-
identify it as a county building.
Which we can add into the EOC.
Can they install it
Sounds good. Just be general.
level this time?
What are you talking about?
Anyway, so that's, this is getting even more off the focus, but if we're gonna do that, would we think about getting one of those signs for all of our buildings?
That's correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so.
And I don't even know if the VOC has to be bothered with it, it just should happen.
Yeah.
It don't need to be,
Yeah.
right? It's just, it's a brand. It doesn't specifically have functions or the actual, which is fine.
Benton County building.
Yep, we can make that happen.
And as we get better and more specific, if we want to be more, I guess, transparent in terms of the services that are at that particular building, then we can do that later on.
It might be in the branding or style guide of how people connect their departments. Is it, I'm looking at you, Corey, that's what.
It's not currently, but we could update.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too. Even here, people want to know what's at this building, the Calapoo building.
Yeah, it can just be Benton County Board of Commissioners, like,
The listing.
boom,
I like the branding idea. I mean,
on all our buildings. Yeah.
we've put a fair amount of effort into what we have and put it on our buildings.
Well, I believe, Rick, we can price that out, right, with Paul?
Oh, yeah, and I think we're prepared to be able to do that. They just didn't want to move forward with anything if there was like a specific desire to say something that is more,
Not yet.
so I think the best thing to do is we want to make sure people know Benton County is here. And I can talk to Paul about just making sure, I think he's prepared, like Morris said, to do something very generic. He knows all the different styles, but we're not ready yet to say anything more specific than that.
And I do think that it would probably be a good idea to set some sort of timeline and expectations for when we are going to name that building. And whether it's in accordance with a new process and policy, or whether it is just us as commissioners today saying, oh, we'd like to name that building by this particular date and use under the current policy, so that we have a name.
It's also like, it's like this once in a generation time that we have. So
Yes.
really doing a snapshot of who the board is right now, but, you know, crisis center, EOC, a courthouse, children and families building. These are all opportunities, but we're also going to be only from the viewpoint historically from what we know now.
Yep.
What our workforce looks like right now and what our community looks like right now. And so that's a lot of responsibility.
I will say too, a lot of those buildings will be named after one of the commissioners who's put a lot of work and time into it is not going to be on the board anymore. So it would probably be nice to give Commissioner Oger a chance to have a say in naming something.
Yeah.
Thank you. I was just thinking the same thing. All of this, most of this is going to be after I'm gone. Yeah.
Well, you're not leaving town, right?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. Yeah. Yeah, I'm just thinking about, maybe we should put naming of that building on an agenda explicitly and have some pool of names that we can draw from by that date, through some process.
Like by the end of the year or sooner, by the end of the summer.
Well, I was going to try to come back to you next month and give you an update on a naming policy and then also a potential process.
Okay.
Vetting it through.
Okay.
You know, if you're open to that. And, you know, yeah, I think Historic
By the end of
Resource
the
Commission
summer?
could be end of summer. Yeah, sure.
There's a target.
No problem. I'd like to give an update before then, though, just.
Yeah, oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because if we're going off
Policy
the
for
wrong
sure.
track.
No,
Yeah.
policy for sure before then, but and have a name.
Yeah.
By end of summer, so that facilities also knows what timeline we're working to
But once again, I think we can move right ahead with
with
just a
the
lit
branding.
up
Mhm.
brand.
No, we can take care of some things until we get into some more specifics.
Mhm.
I think, you know, and these are.
Even the
really
health department could use a nice lit sign.
These are real small things, obviously, but from a communication standpoint, I mean, when you're directing people to meetings and things like that, okay, you go to Avery Building, you go to Sunset Building. You know,
Mhm.
Now we go to 4185. And so just, you know, having those understandings that, you know, everybody knows where Calapooia is, so what do we call that?
Mhm.
Those are small things I know, but it helps everybody at least navigate a little bit more. But we can make do until we get to that point.
That's good. Okay, anything else on that topic? Moving on then. Okay. Next, on the agenda is discussion of the function and role of the Economic Development Office. And Rachel and Rick are the leads here, and we have in our packets the amended IGA, the original IGA, and the past strategic plan and the current presentation that we just received from Christopher about strategy moving forward.
So we've been just talking about it because it is kind of, it's a shared employee, you could say, with Christopher Jacobs, who's been with us for about 8 months, maybe 9 months now. Commissioner Wise is our lead on economic development for our departments. And I think in general, I had a great conversation with Christopher yesterday, but a little bit more robust information of what's going on, what are projects, or just ideas that people are coming in with work. We also, it's on my updates of who we met with in the work that we're doing with HP and the University in Oregon State has been really important. But I think all of you have wanted a little bit more engagement from the Economic Development Office. I know there was a long gap with no one in this position. So we've been trying to give the city and Christopher some time to land, and he presented to us. There's some concerns. That's a really ambitious agenda that, we're concerning. And I think there's another couple of pieces of economic development that we also work on, Rick, as far as funding.
We have some economic development investments. Small,
but it's really-
small ones that we've made, like in cities, you all might recall the transit lodging tax, where you have done $5,000 per year. I think we have, as talked as a group in the past, those have been sort of just dedicated dollars, but not necessarily any other than use it for economic development. There hasn't been like any report backs, something like that. So those are opportunities as well, to where we can do those investments and see, are we getting meeting the expectations.
So there's also, pressing issues with Food Hub that we're very interested in and engaged in. I met last week with RAIN. Everybody familiar with RAIN and what they do? They're really supposed to be promoting entrepreneurship and innovation for underrepresented populations and communities. I just recently learned that Oregon State does not have a Food Hub here, but they do it in other counties.
The Oregon State University. They have a food research center up in the Portland metro area.
Right.
They may be involved in food hubs in other places that they're, but I don't think they lead them anywhere, but they do have a really wonderful food research center up in.
Yeah, so I think that's really pressing from the community. So I guess one of the reasons we put this on goal setting is asking you in some ways of where do you regard the role of the Economic Development Office? What did you like in the past and what would you like to see in the future? Moving forward, like CoreTech, which is a pretty exciting program that the university is working on, is pretty important to us. And we had a meeting last week with them. But
and there's also, as you all know, there's always opportunities from an economic development standpoint when we look at things like, we talked about community development block grant dollars and opportunities that we have pursued. Those have been managed or administered, obviously during COVID, by the Financial Services Department, but how do we maybe leverage those opportunities more? The relationships with Business Oregon themselves.
Right, which has had a lot of,
again, what is it that we want to be able to leverage, and also what changes or do we want to try to make with our Economic Development Office? So again, I think that's kind of why we want to make sure that we're in alignment with the direction that you.
I want to be able to be very comfortable if a business approaches any of the commissioners or myself or work and they want to come to Benton County, that the handoff to the Economic Development Office, which is my understanding of what Christopher's vision is to set them up to be successful, to come to Benton County. And right now, I don't know if we've done the right messaging around that quite yet. So, because I'm sure you've met business owners who are frustrated with a building permit or something went wrong, or the city doesn't want to allow me to do this, and they either move on or something happens and we all are really frustrated. So he wants it to be really a one-stop shop even before, they lease the building, that they're able to do what they want to do so they don't get jammed up. So, he is talking to many, many people in there, but it's trying to avoid that, but also to support that office, and we are navigating them to the right folks.
Then also, how do we make the intersection to the community development? Because in a lot of cases, you use the community and economic development. And I think that's obviously what the city has done by putting the EDO as part of under their community development wing. But what is the intersection to Benton County community development as well? And are we, as we're starting, particularly talking more about workforce housing, that is obviously an initiative that is the Planning Commission is looking at a lot at in terms of land use itself, update of the comprehensive plan. How does this all weave in together?
Transportation
nicely? And
piece,
I think
yeah.
just making sure that it's nice package.
Yeah. Well, just for some context. When I first started, the primary focus of the Economic Development Office was really the business retention and expansion. They didn't do much more than that. And Sean has also been around for all of this stuff and has been tracking it as well, so also looking at him. And they also were focused on a little bit on the traded sector, but they didn't do that incredibly in a very strategic or focused way in the past, when I first came on board. It got a little bit more targeted with the next generation of economic development staff focused on the food and beverage sector in particular, and also working with the tech sector. So I have never, and under the previous leadership, the word was that there were very few inquiries coming from outside of the area about locating here. We're just not as big a magnet in terms of drawing businesses here. So the focus is much more on the innovation side of things and supporting new businesses, new launches, either the ones that came out of Oregon State University research or HP spinoffs or mom and pop in entrepreneurship rather than recruiting from outside of the community. So that's why we don't have necessarily that one-stop hub, because it hasn't been needed in the past. It's been a capacity that was needed on a rare occasion, and they didn't really want to set up shop to focus around that primarily. So that's where it has been. I think that we can be more strategic. I think with the work that's emerging with OSU and HP and the tech sector really being revitalized with the federal investments being made, I think there's an opportunity to do a little bit more, to do more there for sure. But I don't know that setting up an entire economic development office focused on that, being welcoming to new businesses, is necessarily the thing we need to do. It's the grow your own that we've done really well. And then retaining them. And that is the real nub of it. It's been very difficult to retain those businesses and, appropriate space, the ability to build out that appropriate space.
The zoning has been a big issue.
Zoning.
Yep.
Well, it's utilities. It's all that, the systems development charges and that things, that come along with making that space appropriate, because there's a lot of light industrial
Like you
land.
said, workforce housing
And-
too.
And then the other thing, two things that I think are really big are the housing and childcare.
Yeah.
And
Also.
so, and part of what I'm wondering is how much should we be investing through the Economic Development Office, and how much do we want to do on our own, working on some of these issues that lift all boats, whether it's on the housing side, working through community development in that committee, or supporting other childcare focused initiatives, or and we have a pot of money that we've been using for this, and that pot of money is our lottery dollars. And I haven't seen in quite a while, an accounting of that account and how we're doing and over time. And we also had historic CDBG dollars that was just a kind of an account over here that I think we've used up all of now. But so.
Yeah, and one, I think it would be appropriate to maybe put on the radar to have Debbie or someone come. You can also ask for this in the next budget update to be more specific on that account. So I'm happy to.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Hear that, but what I can tell you, just remind the board, you might recall we were running with a surplus of that, and the board and the budget committee elected to put part of half of the historical society support.
In that.
But there is still growing dollars in that account. But I just wanted to remind that was one of the decisions that was made too, was to direct some of those growing dollars to the support of the historical.
And then there's the concern of what happened in Philomath with the mill closing. And, just even meeting over there last week, it's still, that's a big hole in their revenue for water.
Yep.
It's a huge hole for, Chris was talking about the middle career folks who were in the timber industry, not the entry level. They can move on, they can do that work, but where we want to be even in the Economic Development Office, of either helping look at that space to be reopened. Or also, and then also, how are we helping that workforce land? My understanding is the top management all got jobs right away, but it's more that small group and.
Well, I think, Commissioner Strozer was spot on in relation to, if we don't have a specific economic direction or economic policy around bringing new businesses in, it's one, how do we focus on supporting, and retaining what we have? But again, one of the things we constantly hear is workforce housing that is needing childcare. Thank you for bringing that up. Being out in Monroe a few weeks ago, the water piece was such a, that consumed the conversation. So it's a supporting type infrastructure investment. So where is the best investment of those dollars to support those efforts? And maybe it's an opportunity for the board to look and reevaluate how best to meet those needs.
Yeah. Is there a direction that you would want from this Economic Development Officer? Really the small office that you would like to see more of?
And it's a two-person office, and it's going to remain a two-person office from what I can tell. It had more staff at its peak, but that was partly because it included some of the climate action staff as well, and they were shared staff. But that did allow for a little bit more diversity of work. I'm not arguing for, any kind of an immediate change. I just think we need to have a conversation. I think that we need to be thinking about what we want to get out of the Economic Development Office and help to shape where they're going, or do our own thing as a complement, but not to ditch by no means that.
Well, your timing's perfect in that, obviously we were renewing our contract. As you said, Commissioner, we're going to renew it for 1 year to be able to extend till June 30th, 2025. You also are going to be taking on a new budget process here, and probably starting in the fall. So it might be an opportunity to consider, I don't know if it's a subcommittee or if it's just a monthly discussion here to really talk about what do you want that to look like going into next biennium? And then you can really start to message, here's the priorities that we really want to push forward, and then be in a better position when the budget time gets adopted next May, of maybe refocusing that, and also be very transparent in your intentions. So just, I think you're at a good place right now, but you're right, those discussions probably need to start sooner than later so that you're prepared for that time, if that's the direction you want to go.
I think being prepared for the next budget cycle around economic development issues makes total sense. And just, somehow staging some conversations that will get us that way in an iterative process. So maybe focusing a little bit more on the tech sector and getting some of that group of folks in so that we know what the issues are and where the county intersects there and how we can be supportive of that growth. Maybe inviting the folks, the childcare folks in to give a presentation about status and where county help is the most needed, although I know there's some pain points there.
Who's in the lead with that? Yeah.
Who's in the lead? Well, there is an entity, that's based out at Lynn Benton Community College that is focused on childcare. In Lynn Benton Lincoln.
Didn't they come to us?
They have, but it's been quite a while, and it was when I'm blanking on his name, when he was first starting. And they've made significantly more progress, but they're having a very hard time because, as we know, Benton County is a particularly difficult place to work. But just because of the lack of availability of sites. But what they're really working on right now is trying to build up more in-home childcare capacity. But there are a couple of projects that they've got in mind. One with a local company and another with an existing childcare provider, and just trying to make sure that they get some traction and success so that they can keep investing in that space. They've been really pushing, trying to get groups like Good Sam and HP to invest more in childcare as well. So I think if we can work with them somehow to create the right environment, that's all to the benefit.
I guess the concern I have mentioned the HBs and the federal dollars. And it seemed like Benton County wasn't really included in the discussion. OSU, HB, and you know, significant things going on or potentially going on, and us getting information was
Second or third hand.
hit and miss, and it just didn't seem like it's a small community. I mean, we're not talking about millions of
Yeah.
people, and the communication and coordination needs to be better.
So our representative was the director of community development, so that needs to be assigned, but they were only meeting quarterly.
But that's the housing,
The employee
Conversation.
housing, not the
Yeah.
childcare.
right?
I'm working on the housing stuff, so,
Yeah.
so I'm.
Yeah.
I'm taking on that.
Yeah, Rick has been tracking that for quite a while.
Right.
And
And-
HP just canceled a 2-year project to build a daycare center on their campus.
Lawyers.
Hydrogen too, yeah.
Oh, that little factor.
But I guess in terms of the childcare arena, I don't know, so I'm clear on the workforce housing and there's, I think, opportunities there, but in terms of the childcare arena, I don't know that we have a foothold or momentum. I mean, not that there isn't opportunities. Would you agree?
I think that it's a matter of there are the zoning issues that we need to,
Yeah, I
you know, I think could have become clearer.
Yes.
But even in terms of small dollar match or incentive money or something, if we wanted to do something like that.
Mhm.
I think there are times when, or a fee waiver for an operation that wants to expand. I think that if we have some sort of a policy around childcare that allows us to be of assistance in some sort of a way, that's what I would be looking for, because I don't think we have a huge role there.
We
But-
have CDBG money though, more with the city. The city has CDBG money for childcare.
So are we talking about businesses? Are we talking about our employees?
I'm talking community businesses, you know, if there's a childcare provider that really has the opportunity to expand but can't quite make it pencil. And if we have, you know, in our economic development dollars, an opportunity to help defray some of the costs of the fees that we charge, being able to do that, because it is a policy objective of the county to increase childcare capacity so that we have that for the county workforce as an economic development tool. But you know, again, I'm just saying that if we have clear policy priorities, then we can say, okay, how can we help leverage them on the margin? But you know, that's one concept. It's not what I'm recommending. It's just that I've seen that so far in our conversations around this issue, and it would really help to be able to, you know, even just at the margin, help. It's the difference between some of these projects happening and not. And it can be dozens of childcare slots, so.
So I guess I would like to sort of slow down, and we just covered a huge amount of information. And so if we could sort of break it up into chunks and, you know, what we're gonna, what is the focus today? What are the questions do you have for us? I'm sort of unclear on what the intended.
The focus today was to start the discussion.
Okay, what is helpful for staff to know from us?
I think what I'm hearing is that there's a clear desire for the topic that we're discussing on the economic development. So there's a clear desire by the Board of Commissioners to have a more robust discussion about what does that need to be prioritized for, or where do we want that focus to be? And I think we all agree that that's not something we're going to, you know, solve in one meeting. It'll have to be a series of discussions that perhaps that we could bake in between now and I would say the fall, so that we're prepared as we go into the budget cycle to rethink about or reimagine what that may look like as we go into the next budget cycle. So I think that's what I'm hearing today. And so part of our task becomes, how do we organize that best for you to facilitate that? I think there's a secondary part, though, to this, that, which I love these discussions because they get into the policy prioritization. There's a lot of things, we could take off on here in terms of childcare need, in terms of housing needs, in terms of transportation. There's so many different types of things. And at some point, maybe there's that, okay, because one of the things Rachel and I have talked about is how do we as an office support you best from a policy standpoint, prioritization standpoint. And so we think we have these, the ability to maybe craft more support around that. But I think what will inform that will be the things that you were just talking about. Do we want to create a foothold in workforce housing? Where do we want to go with childcare? What are our transportation priorities, public safety? Where are all that, and having that discussion to help inform us so that we can staff. So kind of two parts going on there. I hope that helps Commissioner Wise, but to your question, I feel at least for me, I got clear direction, if I stated it right, on the EDO, what you would want to do. And I think we just have to put our heads together and how to support you guys the next few months.
And frankly, I'd say we just got a presentation last week from the Economic Development Office for the very first time about where the priorities are, what they've done and who they've met with, and where their direction is going. So this was a perfect opportunity to sit there and go, is this the direction that we want? There are two people who are going to be brand new people who are going to be taking this direction into Benton County. And really from our standpoint is, where do you want us to weigh in more or less, which interests you?
Or how do we want to use our limited economic development dollars?
Correct.
And we, when I first came on board, we were contributing money to the Economic Development Office, but we had very little say. And I want to make sure that we still continue to maintain the leverage and say we're supporting that and using our limited economic development dollars in that way. That's the main thing, my main interest. And I want to make sure that it jives with what our priorities are. And, yes, we have to cover the business retention and expansion. That's kind of the core of any economic development office. But beyond that, it's
that, things don't change, things stay how they are, and you want maybe more direction provided in your contract. You are the administrator of the EDO contract, and if it's not maybe delivering exactly what you're looking for, we have that ability, and that is where the conversation could help inform that better. So
Okay, so what I'm hearing is this is sort of two parts: gathering information from us to possibly give us feedback to the city and say, this is what our priorities are for you to work on for economic development, please consider that. Or do we want to use some of the money or that we're giving to the city for that program for other economic development uses?
I think I'm going to back up because those are very instrumental ways to look at it. First of all, what is our role as a county in economic development? Where can we have the most leverage? What we make the biggest difference in terms of making it possible for businesses and for people to live here and stay here and successfully have quality of life for themselves and their families. That is the discussion, and there are many different ways that we can affect that, whether it's through childcare or workforce housing or business retention or whatever. And just from that, but making sure that we're clear about what we want to be doing in this space, and then that can inform the future IGA with the city and their planning, but also can inform how we spend our dollars. How much of our lottery dollars do we want to spend on the EDO contract? Do we want to spend any of it somewhere else? We, under Kate Portia, we had a different relationship, and we had given them, the EDO, that role of supervising our other investments with RAIN and the Small Business Development Center. So do we want to continue that? It's making sure that we are still in sync and that we have an idea of what we want out of economic development. We had extensive conversations about this back in 2017, 2018, and just haven't checked in about it again since then. It took a lot of meeting time back then. But yeah, I would love to see just a series of kind of conversations about what we could be doing in this space and then in order to be ready for that next budget cycle. Yeah. But the other thing I wanted to say is that I think one of the things that we could be doing, and that definitely is in our purview, is updating the urban fringe management agreement. Because, you know, if the city of Corvallis is expanding, if anyone is expanding and looking for new land to do anything here in our area, it's going to be in the urban fringe. And
I agree. I've been saying that for 7 years.
I know,
So
me too. Me too.
let's make it happen.
And it's very frustrating that it just is one of those things, that just language is at the bottom of everything, and
Yeah.
it's.
Because it takes
that-
partnership with the city that it's with too.
Exactly.
And all of them are,
Well, but Corvallis is the most important, and Philomath has been updated relatively recently, so, you know, it takes both, it takes two to tango. Yeah. The other one is, and just thinking about, and we're doing that, our own zoning, the comprehensive.
yes.
Review, so. Yeah. So community development is very key to this conversation.
Yes, I would say definitely involving, you know, one of the focuses of reopening with the voluntary periodic review is like the economic development
Yep.
piece. So I think that we should definitely need to be involving the city of Corvallis and their economic
And the small
development.
cities.
Yes, okay, I have a few different things to say and take it or leave it or see where it goes. So I guess for me, what's helpful to understand is what we view our role in as economic development. Is it in all of Benton County, including the cities? Is it all of Benton County except for Corvallis? Is it just the small cities? I mean, where, kind of what is our focus on?
In the past, it's been all of Benton County, but because the Economic Development Office was very Corvallis focused, we really pushed the focus to the small cities and to rural Benton County.
And I think we were successful
Very.
Dealing with Kate, when Kate Portia
Yeah.
was there.
Yeah.
I think she understood that.
She did, and she did a great job expanding that focus, and then Rain really moved into that space as well, because they had been much more urban focused, and they were seeing, it wasn't just us pushing for more rural economic development, it was other jurisdictions as well, so they've been very successful in that space. But yeah, so, but I don't think it's separable. This is an area where geography, I think, is not, particularly easy to slice and dice,
Yeah.
because any increase in economic activity, it benefits the county as well as the city. So
I completely agree with that. So I'm glad that that's,
yeah,
I can support that. And Corvallis is in Benton County. Yes, they
absolutely.
have their own government, but they are part of Benton County, very important part of Benton County. Having been a city councilor on the other side of this for 4 years and being the liaison to the Economic Development Advisory Board, which is now the Economic Development Coalition, which I'm
it's
now still the
referenced here.
liaison on. And they previously had the Economic Vitality Partnership under Mike Corwin.
Yep.
I see a lot of value in that structure and the work that's done. I also want to acknowledge that gap in the staffing was hard, and COVID was really hard. So I mean, I see that though as sort of like a blip, and we've got the staff back. Hopefully we're continuing to leave COVID behind us. I want to make sure that we're not going to inadvertently duplicate any efforts.
No.
Or, sorry, I'm just trying to go with my flow of thought here. So, I definitely don't want to just discontinue our relationship and take funding away. And if we were to lower the amount of funding at some point, we also need to consider the relationship that we have with the city and how they would view that, and how residents of Corvallis who say, hey, yes, we're in Benton County too, would view that. And I think, Christopher is new, but there is that existing structure for him to fit in, and that staff person sits on all kinds of other boards and has connections and, just by being in that position. So I think that's important. I obviously missed the last board meeting, so I did not get to see this presentation, but I did attend the last couple Economic Development Coalition meetings and kind of was part of the conversations about that plan. I think too, the fact that the Economic Development Office is now under Community Development at the city, I think that's gonna be better than how it was. That's my assessment, so people can be free to disagree with me. So I don't know, those are just my general thoughts right now. I guess the other thing I want to say is there is no shortage of stuff that we want to do and no shortage of issues that we could try to address. I'm just trying to struggle with what it's also abstract right now. And I know we're undertaking a lot of projects at the county and we keep saying, let's not undertake too many projects until we get some through the finish line. So I just want to be mindful that I don't want to get all excited and be like, let's do all this childcare stuff. And then we're like, oh, we can't. And then we wasted all this time.
That's not what I'm saying.
But there could
I'm
be.
not saying that you're saying that. I'm just trying to work this out. This is you and I have a different way of thinking. So I'm trying to understand this in the way that my brain works.
So maybe this is supportive, but not, I think it would be healthy, with our relationship with our economic development director is to really kind of be asking the same questions every time we're presented. And that can be, how are we being supportive with daycare projects? Where do we need to be? What opportunities are coming down the line? What are the daycares that are offering expansions? Are we reaching out to the larger daycare centers and doing that work? And then where are we with the workforce housing project? These kind of some top priorities of things of where is the support needed? Or, you could have an economic development office. I don't feel that this will happen. We'll say, I want to do lots of advertising dollars into making Benton County the workplace where people should come and live and work and do that work. So where do we want to live? I'm just saying in the area, and then asking those key questions over and over and over again to, government doesn't build businesses.
No.
Right? Entrepreneurs do, right? But at the same time, they're looking for that infrastructure to bring their workforce here.
Sorry, go ahead. The Economic Development Office is never going to be the office that supports childcare. There's already one that does that. So I don't know that I want to be asking Christopher those questions. But I want to know that we know where we want to invest our dollars. And I'm not, what I'm saying is, I think that we have a pie and we just need to figure out where the slices are. And if we want to spend a little bit more of it to support some of the childcare development folks that are working out there at LBCC, that's what I want to know. And if we want to spend a little bit more of it focused on the workforce housing, because that's not what the Economic Development Office is doing either, how do we do that? And how do we consider that as part of our economic development portfolio? And just making sure that we are, because we say we're doing some of those other things, but right now we're really not. And so how do we put our dollars where our aspirations are, and knowing that both childcare and housing are critical bottlenecks for business retention and for business development. And then that last piece, the urban fringe management agreement, especially with Corvallis, and simplifying the development code, making it easier. Those are the three pieces that I feel like are not in the Economic Development Office focus, and that we need to be thinking about in terms of the business climate in the county.
Can I maybe make just one thought as I listen and a recommendation in terms of the next steps? So to your point, Commissioner Wise, I think, and maybe the three of you are all feeling good about exactly what the EDO is doing right now in terms of their prioritization, but it seems like a place to start would be maybe a little bit more. I like these kind of discussions to where you can sit around the table, and having Christopher here to really examine, okay, over the next year, what are we producing? What is going to be the outcomes? And so that you could maybe have a little more time to listen more closely and ask some questions so that you understand clearly, this is what you're getting for your investment that you're making over the next year. That seems to be, I'll call that part one. Part two then becomes what you've said a little bit, Commissioner Oger, is, okay, this is what we are getting, but here are some of our ideas and what are the roles and what is the scope that we are trying to impact? And, did we hear things about childcare? Did we hear things about workforce housing? Is there called a gaps analysis in terms of where we're at? And it seems like that phase two is more, and maybe that's a second meeting, where the three of you can really talk about where are the gaps that we're seeing right now? Are we getting the best return on our investment? And I'm not suggesting that we change anything, but at least you're starting to think about how things may change with the contract that you have, or how you may make some of these investments. And I think part of informing that would be good to have Debbie here so you can understand what are all the resources that you have available to you, because as I said, you are making some other investments as well in economic development. So then getting that grounded, then we can hopefully be positioned as we get maybe closer to the end of the summer to say, all right, this is what we have, this is where we're going, this is what are some of our gaps or things we feel, what do we want to try to put together with staff's help on something different perhaps, or maybe something revised going into the budget period. So just in using these particular goal setting meetings as that opportunity. So just to throw that on the table.
And in the previous iteration of the strategic plan for the Economic Development Office, the one that we developed 2017, 2018, the economic development staff came to us and we had, work session, and we just went through the nitty gritty. We went through that work plan. And what I was having a little bit of trouble with this time is that the process that has been gone through so far to get here involved the Economic Development Coalition, but this is the first we'd seen of it. And we weren't consulted at all. I don't know if any of our staff are consulted. So that didn't feel very good. So I think part of what I'm reacting to is just, again, the lack of communications and the fact that we had board level communications before, and we're not getting that. And so that hopefully will change. But again, it's that and the gaps. So I also think that we could have a couple of work sessions that focus, maybe one on partners that are dealing in that childcare space, maybe have members of our planning commission that are working on that housing committee and some of their community partners come and present on workforce housing. Those are great work session topics, and possibly for our quarterly, what do we call it? The one that's more focused on outside organizations.
Info sharing?
Pardon?
Info sharing?
Info sharing, yeah. Thank you. That name just.
I know.
Info sharing, so, but yeah.
That's a great idea in terms of once we've, we're more grounded in terms of what our outcomes are going to be. We have some discussion about where we see some of the gaps. Then I like what you said is that, maybe you bring some other folks to the table to get a better understanding of where there's opportunities. And to your point, Commissioner Wise, we may not be the solution to everything. We can't be. Obviously, we got a lot going on, but there could be partnerships that we can leverage through, I don't know, I think of childcare, I often think of early learning and childcare, the hub, how are we partnering with them? Because they really should be maybe more on the front. Where is CSC in relation to this? So I don't think we're obviously the ones that can solve all the problems, but we certainly can help influence and leverage those partnerships.
And we cannot be a problem for them.
And remembering who all of our partners are too, because it's not just the Economic Development District, or excuse me, the office through Corvallis. I mean, there's also the Cascades West Economic Development District, which I sit on. I got voluntold to be on the executive committee. So, which is actually good. It's good work. But yeah, making sure that we, like I said, aren't duplicating anything and that we are communicating and working collaboratively with all the partners.
Absolutely. And I think that in the past, through the economic development component at the COG, we've also influenced some of the grants that they've gone for. But again, we haven't heard from them directly for quite a while either. It's been
hiring, so they were trying to hire.
Yeah, they have hired.
Yeah.
Then they finally did, yeah.
Yeah, but and that position has had high turnover.
Yeah. Ever since, what was his name left?
I know who you're
Yeah.
talking about.
Yeah. He was there forever, right? And then, yeah, COVID. Like, just made everything.
Well, back to the EDO office, I mean, that already mentioned, but COVID and Kate Portia leaving and having that office be limping along for most of last year. I think it's, we need to make sure we are a partner and not a silent partner, letting them do something over here and getting a report every now and then, but being actively involved in setting priorities and making sure that, I mean, I think Christopher's been there long enough now that it's fair to quiz him on just, okay, here you've stated some ambitious goals, but what if, how are you doing on them? What's Benton County's part of what you're working on, and just making sure that there's good communication going back and forth, and we got used to not communicating because there really wasn't anybody to talk to. And I'm glad you pointed out, Rachel, last week was the first time Christopher's reported to us.
Right, to the BOC.
Yeah, he came in January, but he'd barely been here.
He was introducing himself. Yeah, he just kind of waved.
So it's-
Christopher has a planning background. I guess the previous two economic development folks did not have a planning background. So I think that could also be a really good opportunity for us, because a lot of times the things we want to do require rezoning and doing the right work. And I think he has that background, which kind of.
Jerry's already in the office, planning background too.
Okay.
So it wasn't that they didn't have that capacity. Yeah, and again, there are things that can be done fairly easily that are in the cities daily way, like the rezoning of the airport industrial park. Annexation, yeah, and that just, it's been on
There's work, they're
strategic
working
plan
on it.
forever.
They're moving along, I guess, so.
Good.
I asked about that last time.
Good, because,
Yeah.
and, it's when we see some of these things on the strategic plan and on the action plan forever. Think, okay, well,
Like we said, hopefully we're leaving COVID behind. It's time to pick some of this, stuff up again. So I think overall, good conversation, and I think we need to be clear with our expectations, what we want from Christopher in the city, because otherwise, how are they supposed to know what we want,
Would you all like a one-on-one, maybe with Christopher moving forward, or no?
I think I want a one-on-one. I think what I really want to be able to do is just be more engaged and, but I don't.
Just getting updates. What about, like a monthly update?
Oh, I don't think
Like an
that's- I
email,
think
sorry, I
that's
mean like an email, like if he just sent like, something like he would give the city councilors, maybe, just like send it our way too.
I did ask for more
absolutely.
communication.
Yeah.
Just in general, and I used examples of what would be of interest.
Okay, I don't know if they really get something from him monthly. I'm just.
Yeah,
throwing stuff out there.
if the city councilors are getting updates, then
No,
share them with us.
They're gonna be
please.
getting the same presentation
Okay,
this week or next Monday, I'm not sure, but
okay.
they got the exact same one, so.
I wouldn't
That's fine.
mind a one-on-one with Christopher.
That's fine.
I really don't, haven't had much contact, don't really know what his strengths and weaknesses are, and I think that would be
No problem.
helpful.
And I'd be happy to meet with him, if he, but a little bit of a short timer, but yeah.
Are those updates and one-on-ones, I guess question is there a need to have any further deeper engagement with him as a group?
That's what,
The goal setting to better understand what you saw last week, which was really the first time I guess gets back to, do you feel like you have enough information about the priorities within that plan to do a gaps analysis, if you will? And if you do, that's great. I just want to make sure that we're accommodating your needs for moving forward. Maybe you gain those through one-on-ones. I guess it's really your preference.
Just in general, more communication and different, formal presentation, more informal discussion, just to, so we get a better idea of what he's up to, what his capabilities are, and going back to making sure that the county's interests are on his mind.
and I'm looking at the presentation again, I'm looking at the slide on proposed reporting metrics. And if anything, I think that that's part of where I would like to drill in, because it focuses on land use inventory, economic toolkit utilization, business registry, and the business retention and expansion. And those are all so nuts and boltsy, and it doesn't provide any update on the South Corvallis Food Hub or on the partnerships focused on childcare and housing that are mentioned as part of strategy 5. Yes, I think part of it does matter what he's reporting on, what he's being held accountable for. And those nuts and boltsy things, they're important for process. But I don't know that any of them are going to move the dial in terms of any of the actual economic development.
Although, like the inventory kind of.
The land use inventory.
Is really a good tool to have because it's a data point that we can look at, right?
And again, that's been a sore point ever since I've started with the county. It's never up to date and it's always a goal, and if we never get there, and I'm just not quite sure what needs to be done to make it a little bit more automated so that it doesn't have to be a perpetual chore. Yeah. So I don't know that we've given you.
No, you've given me a lot to
Okay,
work with. I
okay.
took lots of notes. I
Okay.
saw Rick take some notes. We have some ideas, and I think it was a helpful conversation to have. Anyway.
Seems like the takeaway is we want to be more engaged and let the EDO office know that we exist and we have some specific interests that they.
Right. And that presentation was a lot. And I think one of the things that was observed in his presentation was we're chewing off a lot.
What are the priorities?
For the priorities. And so that's kind of where there's a way we can hone down as commissioners, what our priorities are and what do we want to look at it. So I think like that's helpful. So I think it was a good discussion. I think it took more than 30 minutes too.
Okay. Well, thank you for that discussion. And the next item is county administrator updates.
So just was going to give you some recent county activities of note. As many of you know, I toured the health services building. I've had a meeting with the Jails and Justice Center, the National Prison and Group debrief with the sheriff. That's a project that's still kind of moving forward. Went to the HB 4123 Summit of Rural Homelessness. I feel like some of this is old, but I guess we haven't had a goal setting meeting in a month. I had my monthly meetings with Mark Shepard. I had a great tour of Public Works, which was really, I really enjoyed meeting everyone over there. I also met with Republic Services leadership. Some folks came up from Arizona. Rick Krager also joined me. And it was a very, very good discussion. And we're looking forward to, continuing to have conversations. We had a quarterly CIP committee meeting, and the highlight of the month was attending the Benton Breakfast. It was really great to see such employee participation. There was a good participation. There was a great spirit in the room. The committee that put it together made it super fun. I got to give out an award, a couple of us did, and I just thought it was just a terrific, well-attended event. And I hear it's getting better and better and better every year. Some community engagement since the March goal setting was, I met with Julie Brandeis with Cormac, C-O-R, and Rick Krager was also part of that, as was Christopher Jacobs, talking, we wanted an update on Cormac, and we plan on trying to bring them to you in June of all the projects they're working on in Oregon State. This is breaking, but we both met with Robin Harkless, Commissioner Wise and I did, and got did we meet with Robin together? No, I don't think we met with Robin together. No, but we did meet with Allison Hopgood, and we toured the CDDC. And I also met with James Tom and got a extensive 7-building tour of HP, which was pretty cool. What a facility. And we talked a lot about, we actually talked about EDI. We talked about some sustainability projects that their new CEO has implemented, which is kind of interesting. Future projects, they also have a community garden. We talked about employee engagement, how to get people back to work. We talked about the failed daycare center, which they are continuing to try to come up with some ideas as well. They have like every Wednesday, they try to get their employees in. It's like middle of the week and they feed them. They always have like a lunch planned to try to get people back and folks into the office. Some professional organization activities. The Valley City Managers and County Administrative meeting is ongoing. I met with the new Rain Catalyst CEO, who happens to be named Rachel as well. So, and then I also did about a 1-hour interview with the Harvard Kennedy School, with a woman named Grace Fisher, and I'll be at an alumni story next month of becoming county administrator in Benton County, which will be kind of cool. Some upcoming activities is a wrap-up meeting with UPD consultant. As you know, that is our EDI consultant who will be presenting up their findings. I'm going to the Scenic Byway Management Plan Steering Committee. I'll see you there. Yay! So that'll be great. I met with Helen Higgins regarding the landfill legal implications of AI and recent development in labor law, doing a little training. I think Tracy is going to be joining us. It's a local. We are continuing to look at AI and how it's going to be interwoven into our systems as well as into our lives. This one is interesting to me because it's the legal implications of labor law, which I think will be interesting. We have a NACA meeting still going on, a tour of the Lincoln Health Center, and I'm going to be attending their staff meeting. And I'm going to be on a suggestion, go to the College of Engineering Expo for the student project displays, which I hear is really cool.
Fun.
And Laurel may be stopping in as well, which will be pretty neat to see who the best and the brightest and what wild and interesting things that they are showing us. So I'm looking forward to that. And those are my updates.
Breath.
Yes. Is it too much?
I think so.
Good.
Matt, are you ready?
Yeah. This should sound familiar, but less than a month ago, I toured Jackson Frazier with Sherry Brubaker from Val Hoyle's office, and she was enthusiastic and impressed, and I think will serve us well trying to get the funding to complete that project. But I think it just has a lot of benefits, and whether it's as a standalone or connected to Owens Farm to the west of the highway, and figuring out how to make connections with some of our islands. kind of a perpetual topic, the Brandis property west of the fairgrounds. And I'm hoping that maybe Jesse Ott and our previous CFO / deputy county administrator form or maybe Rachel meet with the Brandis, probably just John, but suggested to Jesse that there's a built-in contact before the county fair where John gets a gift basket, and I think that might be a good opportunity to say, hey, we haven't talked about the property, your property that the fair can't function without. I don't envy John and family dynamics, and I think if he was the decider, that we would have had a deal a year or two ago, but having to keep a couple siblings and his mother and to come to a decision. I was a year ago or whenever we finally got a price tag on the property from the Brandises. And oh, okay, now we're ready. And I'm not quite sure how that fell apart, but it seems like when you advance a price, it's kind of an indication that you're ready to play, let's make a deal. And so it's one of those, like some other projects we just talked about. Well, are we still talking about that?
Forever.
Almost basically had a deal with the father almost 30 years ago, but he died. And so we've periodically had these discussions, but we can't forget about it and have to figure out. Got the word that John Brandis was not real happy when Joe Kirby and Lynn McKee went away, and this is terrible. And I'm not sure that we've recovered from that and need to make a fresh start. So. As was mentioned, had a CIP meeting early in May, which is last week. And I think that went well, figuring out some projects that were on the list, like the new roof for the old courthouse that is a real challenge because of the material. We're gonna postpone that for a year or two and see if we can find somebody that's more, I think, I forget the dollar amount, but it was 3 times more than what we had budgeted. And see if we can do anything about that. But I think overall worked well as far as figuring out what projects to go forward with and which ones can try to catch next time around. The breakfast was last Thursday, very well attended, good weather, everybody seemed like in a good mood and close to 300.
350, maybe?
And which was up quite a bit. I think last year was the first time after COVID, and so building it back up, but I think very successful. And then Saturday, went to Mount Union Cemetery Memorial event that wasn't real well attended. It's the 160th anniversary of Mr. Shipley's donation of his land for a cemetery because Negroes couldn't be buried or had a hard time being buried in an appropriate setting. So he dedicated or donated a nice piece of land on a hill, and now it's a private cemetery, but anybody's welcome. The sheriff was there, and one takeaway from that is we have this room named, but I don't think we have any information on homes in Shipley. There is a picture of, I forget her first name, but Holmes. There is no picture apparently of Mr. Shipley, but so we can get some history and a picture in an appropriate place around here. But it was a nice day, and on my way there, about half the Philomath School Board was meeting at the Timbertown Coffee, and I stopped by there for a little bit on the way to the cemetery. So I think that's what I have.
Okay, thank you. Have you eaten any salmon lately?
Oh, yeah. Where is it?
We went to
There it
the
is.
Philomath Rotary Salmon and Jazz event. How was it? It's good. Yeah. It's low key, but
I remembered it as better attended, but in the past.
it was fairly well attended, but yeah.
It could have been a different venue and,
I think it's been outdoors before and a different time of year, hasn't it?
no,
No? It's always supposed to be-
but I remember more of a cafeteria type setting. This was in the Philomath High Gym.
I saw the photos on Nancy's Facebook page.
Okay. There lots of people got up and danced at the end.
That's
during
good.
just the jazz thing. So that
Good.
was, yeah. Looks like people had a good time.
Well organized and fundraiser put on by the Philomath Rotary, and our undersheriff was Rogers was taking tickets. He's been a long time Philomath Rotary person.
Rotarian. Well, I went to that too. As you guys might have noticed, I was gone last week because I was at a conference. I was at the National Association of Counties Western Interstate Region Conference, which is always, it's just always interesting to go to. It's just very different to spend time with that segment of commissioners. In general, I mean, you look across the opening session and half the people are in cowboy hats. And a fourth of the people there are from Montana and they're cattle ranchers. And then, of course, there's, there's a good mix, but there's a lot of, it's very Western themed. So some of the good sessions I attended, innovative forest health projects with federal, county, and private sector partnerships, housing affordability in Western counties, outlook for drought, water supplies, and wildfire in the West. And then bridging divides, 5 keys to fostering civility in public discourse, which I feel like was pretty intuitive or pretty like, they're not hard issues to understand. It's just getting people to be open-minded. Anyway, and some of the takeaways are that Benton County is in a pretty good position with a lot of, we've started to take action on things that maybe we haven't solved, but we're ahead of the 8 ball compared to a lot of other counties.
Yeah.
So that's good to know. And it was in Yosemite, so it was beautiful. Yeah, so it's a good opportunity. So this is a fun part of the job. If you guys are looking for something to do on Saturday, you should come down to Monroe for their annual barbecue and lager fest competition. And your very own Commissioner Wise will be a judge at the barbecue competition.
What time is it?
It goes from 10 to 5. And I don't actually know yet what time I'm supposed to be judging, so waiting to hear back from Mayor Sheets as things develop.
Well, as long as we're talking about Saturday, I'll add, there's an evacuation drill. I think there's 2 sites and one's
Right here?
this building.
I'll be in Monroe eating barbecue.
I think we'll do a little public messaging too, because, folks like to drop their ballots off here.
Oh, yeah.
So
that's
it's a
gonna
little bit
be-
of a crowding, so we're gonna do a little public messaging behind
Yes,
diverting
given that
folks.
it's the last weekend
Weekend.
before
Mhm.
election day.
Mhm.
Yeah, have we heard, so I know last year or last election, I don't remember, we had some issues with just increased traffic on the road that people weren't used to, and people speeding through the parking lot and driving around our parking lot. But we have better signage now where the drop box is. So I just was
Yeah,
wondering if anybody had heard any complaints or if we have it pretty much under control now.
I'm just most concerned that people can drop their ballot off
On
and
Saturday.
not get blocked off by fire.
Yeah, on Saturday,
Apparatus.
I think this Saturday, maybe we just need some social media presence that our Dropbox is not accessible that morning, because the exercise is primarily in the morning, and
Yeah, it's
what
like
Brian was saying.
Are we
9 to
allowed-
1.
Are we
10 to
allowed
1?
to do that?
Well, it's just not going to be very feasible, because
Yeah.
basically we're one of 2 evacuation points.
Okay.
And they're drilling, in terms of where, going to an evacuation point and how it affects the evacuation point and what the flow is like, and but he said that it would be busiest here from about 9:30 or 9 to 11, so, yeah.
It's there in one other location. I forgot the other
The
one.
church
The church.
on Highway 99, I think.
Oh, okay.
Um,
North of town.
Yeah,
Is
Okay.
that through like CERT?
no, it's not that church, actually. I'm wrong about that. It's not through CERT. This is a joint exercise between the city and
City and county, other
emergency
emergency.
operations.
Okay. I saw
But
something about it.
CERT is involved, and the
Okay.
CERT folks are going to be staffing the 2 emergency sites. This one, Benton County CERT here, and the city CERT, I think it's a different church. I have the wrong one, but it's the church that's up in North Corvallis. It's the other site.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you for flagging that conflict.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have more to?
No, but I do we need to add a thing on our agenda for deputy county administrator updates?
I was wondering about that at some point, unless they're being covered by Rachel. Yeah.
I mean, I'm always happy to provide, I'm prepared to provide, updates. Rachel and I talk together a lot, so just real quickly, I will, some of the relevant things that I know you've been tracking. I just wanted to let you know that the SMMP continues to move forward. You all got the memorandum from Rachel and I in terms of our plan and approach. Wanted to just let you know, I kind of break it into 4 buckets, is that we obviously have the need for a task force, which needs a little bit more parameters around what that is. And so we will be working on that. We also are delivering to the contractor today a revised statement of work, because as I think I mentioned to you, the contract isn't done, but we are moving to try to finalize that by the end of the week. The next step would be a clear, concise project plan that really kind of moves us through what's going to happen between now and hopefully the end of the next fiscal year around this work. And then part of this too is the contract itself providing a lot of tools that are going to be necessary in terms of, what are some of our innovative practices? What is our inventory list of current opportunities across Western Oregon and the state? So again, just want to let you know that that work is moving as a high priority on the list, and myself and Sean and Bailey are all working in close conjunction with Steve Chase as we move that. So I just wanted to provide you that assurance because I know it's a big piece on your radar. Also wanted to let you know, last week I went to the House Bill 2004 Symposium, which was quite good and sort of refreshing to be able to focus on some really cool things. Marion County was there and they talked about their current program that they have for behavioral health reflection. It was great.
Yeah.
To be able to see how they have really invested people who have been benefited by the program. They're actually now staff in the program and how it's really working. Few key takeaways. Number one, start small. Don't try to really make this thing so big and unwieldy. So I think that was a key takeaway. The other one is coordination. We've got to have a strong coordination effort. That's where Marion County was really, really good. Their coordinator was fantastic. Next steps, just so you all know, I have Thursday planned with our internal group that includes the DA and the Sheriff, Commissioner Ojiro. I think I did put you on as kind of the connecting point to that. Just this is really more to try to get our focus around scope and what we want to do. The next step would be really working with community members as well to try to define that better. So again, just wanted to brief you on that. Third thing is health services, as Rachel knows, that was a huge priority for me as I took this job. I've been a little bit sidetracked from that, but it hasn't moved away from me. And what I mean by that is really getting to the formulation of our structure going forward. I think it will probably be important to come back to you here. I'm hoping in the very near future, because you all did make a direction on that. I had kind of forgotten about that, to be honest with you. And so if that direction needs to be altered, then clearly we would want to talk to you about the reasons why. And I have some really good thoughts about how we might really still capture the element, but create an efficient structure for everyone. So more to come, but I've been having lots of discussions with April and Lacey. We're going to be pushing that more into staff input and getting more information on that going forward. I won't bore you with the courthouse and crisis center since you got a little bit of update that, sorry, Nancy, you weren't at that meeting, but certainly could talk to you if you want more. But it's exciting time because we're actually going to start seeing things really move. You're going to see the buildings start going up there at crisis center, and then you will probably start seeing dirt move come June. So good stuff. And then lastly, federal and legislative stuff. We are starting to get a lot of questions on federal priorities. I think I mentioned to some of you last week that one thing that has gotten attention is the historic courthouse. There is interest coming from the offices about maybe taking that forward. We did find out, unfortunately, that it's a 50% match requirement on the program as opposed to the 20%. But we did collectively agree to continue to pursue that, even though I would have to maybe look at other ways to provide that match, perhaps in kind, because that is allowed. So we didn't want to necessarily throw away that opportunity. But the congressional offices said, just because you move it forward doesn't mean that you can't still say, well, okay, well.
We can't find the money.
Yeah,
Right.
so there's still opportunities. Have not heard anything yet on Jackson Fraser, which I know is our top priority in relation to that, but we'll keep working it. And maybe be talking a little bit about, do we need to make calls? Do we need to push out? And then from a state legislative stuff, not really much to say at this point, other than I can tell you, we have gotten notice from Department of Administrative Services about our funding that we received during the last session, and that should be moving forward, which includes the $2.5 million for housing, which needs more discussion. So that's the kind of high level stuff.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to just briefly mention some of the things I've been doing. There's a lot of kind of standing stuff going, and then we have a handful of things that just want to double check about who's going to what meeting and do some air traffic control And one topic where there's, needs a little bit more discussion about whether we want to be participating. So I agree with what's been said already about the Benton breakfast. It was awesome. I'm sorry I had to leave early, but it was a fun event. And there was just great energy in the room. I also,
You missed the pile up of everybody
I'm so glad.
at the same time.
I knew about that.
We saw Jen there and she was counting the cars, just so you know, our
Interesting.
sustainability.
Yeah. I know, I actually had to leave early because I was presenting for the introductory presentation for Natural Resources Day through Leadership Corvallis. I've done that for the last 9 years or so now, and it's always fun. Usually get great questions, a great engagement from a group of folks. Lily, who is the newer Economic Development Office staff person, is part of that group, so got to see her again the next day. So it was a good opportunity to meet with people. Also went to the Celebrate Kids Breakfast at Corvallis Boys and Girls Club last week. Always a good event.
I saw all the cars there when I was dropping my kid off at the
Yeah,
bus.
yeah. Again, another one of those where there are lots of vehicles. Also had an opportunity to sit in on online presentation of Zone Haven software package that our emergency management folks are using. The city of Corvallis has embraced it a little bit more. It's more useful in an urban environment than it is in a rural environment, the way the software is structured. Our staff are working with city emergency management staff to figure out how best to use that with community members to help ease the process of evacuation and not confuse people more, given that it's yet another point of information beyond the emergency alert system. And that tool is going to be used in part for the evacuation system, evacuation exercise this weekend. So it should be interesting to learn from that. Wanted to mention the DSAC interviews, just to Rick and to Rachel. We had 24 candidates overall, but some of those are continuing or potentially continuing members whose terms are expired, but we want to consider them in the mix as to whether to continue them on. We have one more interview to go, and then we'll be deliberating about those appointments. So that's that'll occur next week, that deliberation.
Yeah, we have
Not next week,
so
June
many
6th.
so many great candidates. Like, I don't know how we're gonna decide.
Yeah,
It's a good place to be in.
Keep them in mind because, since you got that recruitment, that would help a lot with some of our other boards if you think they'd make.
Potentially, yeah. I think a lot of them were very, very focused on this. There were 2 or 3 that indicated that they had broader interests and would be happy with a couple of different things, but yeah.
A lot of engineers.
There was a lot of
A lot of
engineers, yeah.
Yeah. Let's see, the upcoming, I am going to be meeting with the executive director and I think board chair of a group called Home Share. I know that they've been down here in the area recently because they were on a panel that the Sustainability Coalition Housing Committee had highlighted. And they wanted to meet with me and to talk more about Benton County.
One of them was from Bend.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
This is a statewide organization, but I think they're just starting to really move out into other locations where they really got going. I'm familiar with an analogous organization that was in existence in Seattle when I last lived there 30 plus years ago. But basically they do a matching of people that have like an additional space in their home, people that need a room or a place to live so that people can actually share homes. And I'm not sure whether they focus on rent share or, more. I'll learn more and let you all know. Philomath Chamber lunch this Thursday. I'm planning to attend. I don't know whether either of you are.
One?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be there.
Okay. So a couple of us will be there. There, OSU towards the end of the year does a lot of showcase stuff. There's one on clean water, and I'm hoping to go to that on the 22nd over at LaSalle's. We'll see if I make it. It's one of those things that falls off the calendar. Owens Farm Open House, Thursday to the 23rd, is part of the Natural Areas Month celebration. And I'm planning on going to that for part of it, just to check in on all of the plans over there at Owens Farm with the partners. Community Health Centers Board is going to have their first in-person meeting since COVID. And so that should be kind of nice. Community Health Centers Board.
Really?
It's Monday.
Yeah, this coming Monday.
It's on my
You s-
calendar,
you
isn't
said
it?
you're
Yeah.
gonna come to that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the,
It's the
Yeah.
dates. I was like, what?
I just go where my calendar tells
I
me.
know.
yeah, but it'd be nice to meet in person because it's been a long time.
Yeah.
Wow, I can't believe it's been that long.
I think what else is more directly relevant to the county, the Association of Oregon Counties Health and Human Services has had a series of meetings, and then I've also been attending the local government advisory committee meetings. A lot of that has focused on behavioral health and kind of coordinated care agenda for the next long session. And the next session for that Health and Human Services meeting is going to focus on really dialing in on the legislative priorities for the next long session. But also has been focused very much on the whole deflection program creation and what the issues are for the counties. AOC's been a great player, bringing folks together to help provide support. And I've been asked to participate on a couple of different task groups and panels in this world. I doing what I can, but we'll see how things evolve over time, just because
A lot
it's a lot.
on top of a full-time job.
Yeah. But all very necessary things. One of the panels that was invited to participate in was one to talk about alcohol as a substance that is a problem in terms of addiction. And there, in the last couple of sessions, there's been a public health push to increase the alcohol taxes. And so they're wanting to know more from the county perspective, the county public health perspective. I know just about how much of a burden overconsumption or irresponsible consumption of alcohol places on counties. And so
That's for, sorry, city of Corvallis.
yeah, absolutely. So, and I think that, I don't know whether there's a city panel as well. I can write and find out, but they were asking about law enforcement participation, and I suggested that they contact our sheriff or one of the other sheriffs. So I also went to a meeting on the Community Services Consortium leadership transition. There's a task force that's been put together to work on that and to think about the model for the next, for leadership, whether there should be a joint leadership across the COG and CSC. So we've asked staff to go back and put together some pros and cons and some more information so that that task group could be more effective moving forward. And I think we have another meeting in about a week. I should let you know that the sequential intercept mapping exercise that we did through the WCJC, we got the draft back and had very short turnaround time to provide some edits. So the executive committee for the Land Justice Council met, and we provided some edits to the staff of GOBI, Greater Oregon Behavioral Health, Inc., so that they can be incorporated. Then we'll use that draft SIM map and the action plan recommendations for some strategic planning at the WCJC to determine what that group will focus on going forward, and also as a bit of a springboard to talk about updating the bylaws and processes for WCJC. It's very much in flux. There's still no staff person there. And there's some great uncertainty because that group has budget. And the budget, I don't know if you even know this, Rick, the budget for WCJC is based on, I think, an IGA that was never actually fully executed. That set up
Nice.
a 190.org was trying to, but it is not a 190.org. WCJC is not, it's just an advisory council. But there are dues that are collected every year for that body from the parties to that IGA that wasn't executed. So that includes Philomath, Corvallis cities, and Adair Village, and the OSU, and the county. Monroe was not at the table, and so Monroe is not part of any of this, and I'd like to change that. But because Jody Robin is no longer at the DA's office,
And she's the one that had been with Rick Hine, the treasurer of WCJC, formerly with the OSU Credit Union, the director there, president. No one knows how that happened. No one knows how that budgeting happened or anything else. So I know that Renee over there has been trying to figure out how to make that work going forward. And usually dues invoices go out around this time of year to those jurisdictions. So, and that's not in policy anywhere. It's not in the IG. I mean, there's no, it's not in any document. So, yeah.
I'll look into it.
It's just a
It's a bit
weird
mystery to
thing.
me too, so.
Yeah. I can give you those kind of core documents for that body. Vance has them also. We've tried to do more research and.
I'll check with Debbie too
Yeah.
and see what we have in Mary Otley's files and stuff. so.
Maybe there's something. I think the DA's office handled it all with Rick Hine, who's now retired and not available. So it's a little frustrating. Just a couple other things. Benton Community Foundation is having a bit of a tour, a hard hat tour of their new Leadership and Learning Center. And I can, if you're interested in hearing more about what they're planning at that space, I can send you those tour dates.
That'd be great.
And
Yes, please.
okay, and they did their due diligence on being the fiscal agent for the EPA resilience grant. And it was a very exciting proposal to involve project at Alsea School and at Monroe at the food pantry and Philomath with either one or two partners there. But that really fell apart because it was such a huge project and it's a reimbursable grant. And so for an entity like the Benton Community Foundation, they just could not operate in that reimbursable fashion. Don't have millions or hundreds of thousands to front for that kind of project. And I know that they were working very closely with Brian Lee, and I'm not sure where our piece of that has gone, but it's a little disappointing that as the Community Foundation, we're not able to help make all of that happen. But there were a lot of good prep meetings, and I think that there's a lot of readiness and willingness to engage in these projects, community by community, from some other funding source, even if that one's not the right funding source. A lot of good relationships built. So I think I'm going to stop there with that and then just move into a couple of the other events that are coming up. I'm just wanting to make sure that we have people at all of them. The next Thursday night, the 30th of May, there's both the Lucky Mute floodplains meeting out in Kings Valley and the Historic Preservation Celebration, Bridging History. And I think that you two are kind of doing that. I would like to go to the Historic Preservation Celebration because that's the first time I can actually do it. I don't have a conflict that night.
Is it on a
which I
Wednesday
usually
or a
do.
different day?
It is Thursday, May 30th.
May 30th.
Should be
I
in
feel
the
like I have,
calendar.
let's see.
It's from 6 to 8 PM at LaSalle's.
Yep, okay, it's on my calendar.
Yeah, I know they were expecting you, but I
Yeah.
will also attend. And I don't know if we need to put in any kind of a notice that there might be 2 or more commissioners in attendance. That is something that we
Good, yeah.
yeah. And Pat, are you planning to go to the Lucky Mute?
They were both on my calendar and, yeah, so I will do the Kings Valley
Good,
one.
thank you. I know they were hoping you would attend.
I think I told them I would attend.
Yeah, and then the Resource Advisory Committee for the Sayusla National Forest, it's their Title II meeting. They haven't held one of these in a long time. Commissioner Jaramillo was on the RAC. But during the previous presidential administration, all of the RACs got suspended. And this administration has reinvigorated them and they're again making grants. And we, in the past, when Commissioner Jaramillo was sitting on the RAC, had a role in terms of weighing in on projects and advocating for specific projects. We have also in the past submitted the project proposals, but I don't see any of the project proposals
coming from Benton County, this time being from Benton County. But you have the project list in front of you. And the June 5th meeting is an opportunity to advocate projects. So I just wanted to bring it forward again as an opportunity for funding in future and as a way for us to engage. It can be really interesting to go to these meetings and just hear about the proposals as well within the natural resources space. So I haven't been to one of these in many, many years. Yeah. So I just wanted to find out, especially Pat and Nancy, whether you are interested, and just let you know that the opportunity is there for engagement.
June 5th.
Yeah. This is an all-day meeting, so it's kind of crazy. But the project presentations, and then there's a county commissioner comment period, a dedicated comment time. And so if
That overlaps with leadership, but.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. But if we had a project in the batch,
Mhm.
then it would be
worth
very, yeah, very much worthwhile. Yeah,
But you're saying we do not have one?
no, if you look at the group, the projects in Benton County, one is a Forest Service project, one is Institute for Applied Ecology. Rehabit Natives, I do not know of that group. Trail Keepers of Oregon and City of Corvallis Public Works.
Okay.
If we wanted to go and advocate for the city project as a favor to the city, that's something that we could always do. If I don't, it's something we could approach Mark Shepherd about and say that we have the opportunity as county commissioners to go to a comment period and. It doesn't hurt. I know that at these meetings, having people actually comment and advocate can make a difference.
Yep.
Anyway, that's that.
Did I steal one of yours?
No, I have one.
Okay, I was gonna say, I was like, why?
Yeah, so it's all, okay, I have a copy of both, yeah, so I have yours, you can have mine.
Okay. No, I have yours.
You have mine. I have
I've
yours.
got my own. Right.
I think there were extras floating around. And I think that was it in terms of coordination. Yeah. A lot.
It's nice to have a calendar focused to the goal setting meeting, so we all know all the things, because I know a lot of times it's just an email is sent, an invitation that goes to one or three or none. Yeah,
Yeah, I definitely,
it helps divide and conquer too.
yep, that's part of the intent of the whole info sharing component among the commissioners, is just to make sure that we cover those community events. There's all sorts of stuff going on, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I've got a little more info to share. Last Wednesday, through the COG and Campo, had two hour-long sessions, Philomath Boulevard and short to medium term improvements that are proposed by Kittleson and Associates that do a lot of planning in our area. So for the first half hour was a presentation, mainly pedestrian and bike safety improvements, because Philomath Boulevard from 53rd to 15th is not, it's okay for cars, but not so good for people getting across it. So pretty good proposal. No funding, just here, well, this is what we could do. And so I'm not exactly sure. The legislature's Joint Committee on Transportation is doing 13 sessions around the state, starting in Portland, June 4th, and Albany is July 16th, where you've got a chance, if you're organized, to make a pitch for priority projects in our area. And so I will, and the reason for the listening tour, they did something similar in 2016 before the 2017 session, where they came up with 5.3 billion of funding for basically new projects. This time, the proposed focus is taking care of what we already have. There was very little maintenance money in the 2017 package. Our area is getting a new bridge across the river and safety improvements on Highway 20. So it was significant in our area, and I hope we can do some good in this session, but it's the idea is, well, we're behind on maintenance, better do something about it. And so that's going to be one of the topics / priorities in the long session next year.
Oh, the other thing I should mention is that I am the commissioner appointee on the Urban Renewal Agency for South Corvallis Urban Renewal District. So once a year, I'm involved in the budget process for the Urban Renewal Agency, which tends to be about a 10-minute gavel in, gavel out. But that's because there's been very little money, of course, because it's such a new tax increment financed entity. But this year, there's significantly more revenue projected to be generated, projecting $335,000 in revenue in fiscal 24-25. And that is, there was a beginning balance of 712,000. So there'll be a budget of more than $1 million. So it's interesting to see that fund growing. And the reason I bring it up is because part of what's going on in South Corvallis is also an ODOT project for the Highway 99 improvement project down there. And they've just come up with a kind of a final vision document for the Highway 99 improvement. And some of these Urban Renewal Agency dollars are likely to be used to help build out some of those components of that safety and livability work in the Highway 99 corridor project, which is also all online. And there's an open house for that Highway 99 project occurring right now, a virtual open house. So you can go through and look at that and see what the implications are. And it's make a pretty dramatic change in the flow down there. So it's kind of fun to look at, slowing traffic down, making it more walkable, and improving the potential for, I think, economic development at kind of that retail level, storefront level in that corridor. So, yeah, that budget meeting is Wednesday night. So.
Would you send me a link to the virtual?
The 99, Highway 99? Yeah, sure.
Because I hear bits and pieces, but I haven't seen real proposals.
Yeah, it's I've been trying to track it, but a lot of the meetings occur during the day and I have not been able to make it. But the website is good. Okay, anything else for the good of the order?
I did have one other question. So Bailey Payne sent out an email trying to orchestrate tours.
Yeah.
And then, so I replied, and then admittedly, I'm still trying to get caught up on my email from coming back from the conference, but do we know if that is gonna happen? Do we have an itinerary yet? Or?
It is, we don't have itinerary yet. He talked to me about, because it was something we were going to try to coordinate around the kickoff, but we still think it would be good information for anybody that's interested to go and see some of the different locations. So I told him to move forward, but
Okay, so it still should be this Friday.
Yes.
I just gotta adjust some other schedules.
Okay, I will make sure though he does a follow-up. I think he was just first finding out who all was interested, so I will make sure to get something out though.
Okay.
I'm sure he's been-
But
Pretty
it's
good.
this Friday,
Yes.
okay? Because I signed up, but I hadn't heard anything back.
Yeah, I think he took he's collecting all the people, but I'll follow up with him today, see when he's gonna put out something to tell you time, location, et cetera.
Oh, I think it did have a time, meet it here at 8:30 or 9.
I'll have him do something a little more formal though.
Kind of all day. Okay,
I think that zipped right by me.
Yeah, May 10th is the email. Me.
But the tour is this Friday.
Yes.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna pass on it this time. And I know one of the sites is the MRF that we visited previously.
this is a new MRF,
It's not the one up in
Brooks.
Brooks.
We saw the old one.
We saw it before it was upgraded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They had pictures and I
Yeah.
remember.
Yeah, that's right. I remember seeing the pictures. Yeah,
Modules.
Yeah. You're right.
That was before my time, so.
Yes. I just knew that Pat and I had both been up there to see just to that site.
April of 2019,
Very good.
on a rainy day. So we watched the operation on TV or
Yeah.
on their.
I remember that. Yep. Okay. Well, excellent. If there's no other business, this meeting is now adjourned.
Yay.